do have like a producer and all that jazz. So
Nice.
I don't pay him. So he's in Wichita actually, and so forth. So you guys ready to rock?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's just go. Hey guys, what's going on?
I'm showing off my Mickey ears.
Okay, show off your Mickey ears.
Because this is the third time I'm showing them off because we weren't even recording earlier, but bingo, it's got a whip.
We were recording.
Oh, we were?
Well,
either way.
We were, and here's why.
Mickey has a satchel.
So good.
It's not a purse.
I love that there's a whip on the hat.
Just in case I need it. Stink!
Yeah, we're going to get into the whip thing. All right, more importantly, we have to talk real fast. Speaking of accessories, first of all, Kate, that was all. You were just at Disney World, right?
Yes, in May.
Right. Were you going like right after we did the pod, or was it before? I can't recall.
I think it was right before we did.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because we recorded on May 22nd. And then I've been so for people listening in, we may be releasing this after your Mummy pod, which is coming soon. It's so good. I've listened to it. It's so good. It's good.
I'm very excited to listen to it.
Okay. The good ones, I get really excited about. And I'll usually message Fletcher, our producer. If you're listening in now and you don't know what the bad ones are, that's because I'm not telling. But when the good ones are, I was there's usually a moment when I'm recording. And I'm like, holy shit, I want this person back on the pod. And I knew that within 24 seconds talking to Kate. I was like, oh, this is my friend now. Okay, cool.
Yep.
And then we immediately were like, oh, can we do another one? And so she's like, I have other friends. I was like, I don't. So come on. So new friends, Leah and Julia. You guys want to introduce yourselves to the pod? I'll say Leah first because you're on my left. So hi,
Okay.
Leah, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm super chuffed to be here. So my name is Leah Packard-Grams, she/her pronouns. I hold a BA in Greek and Latin and classical and Near Eastern archaeology from Bryn Mawr College, and I took my MA in ancient history and Mediterranean archaeology from the University of California, Berkeley, which is where I am now. I'm currently pursuing my PhD here in Berkeley, and I'm writing my dissertation about a corpus of papyri in Demotic Greek that actually came out of crocodile mummies at the site of Tebtunis in Egypt. And I am involved with 2 dig sites in Egypt now, the site of Emheda and the Dakhla Oasis, and now the site of El Hibba in Beni Suef in the Nile Valley. So that's me.
Okay, can we pause for a second? Can the rest of us stop? I don't feel like we can follow that.
I know. I'm you can't have me go after that.
It's all the things. I do the thing. Julia, it's your turn. I'm glad I'm not saying this anymore. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm a person. I can't stand up to it. Julia Troche, last name like crochet, but with a T. I am a UCLA Bruin for my BA, and then I went to Brown for my PhD in Egyptology. So I have an actual degree in Egyptology, which is kind of cool. And in terms of
the Stargate episode,
oh, I would love to. TV show or movie or both?
Well, I know some people who are on the TV show, but we'll get into that.
I might need to talk to you again about this.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
okay. Keep talking.
With that whole TV show for many years,
and
an amazing movie. But yeah, I worked actually. Speaking of Stargate, I worked in the field at Abydos or Abydos for many years, and one of my sort of greatest claims to fame is that I wore the symbol for Earth, the little triangle with the sort of dots on the end, from Stargate I got a patch and I put it on a hat, and I wore that hat around for my first season in Abydos. I don't think anybody got it, but I knew.
Legendary.
That's
you knew in your heart. You knew in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
such
an
important site too, Abydos. It's such an important
It's the coolest site. It was the first time I ever dug, and I was so lucky to just work in the most amazing place probably in Egypt or the world. I don't know. And then I've been really lucky. I've also worked as an archaeologist at Luxor, as an epigrapher reporting graffiti at Karnak Temple, and also at Petra in Jordan. So I've been to some of the most amazing sites in the world. I've been very, very lucky. Yeah. And then I'll give a plug real quick. So I'm also president of
what's called ARCE, ARCE, Missouri, which is the American Research Center in Egypt. And they're a nonprofit organization that has local chapters across the country. And I also sit on the board for the national or international. We have offices in DC and Cairo, American Research Center in Egypt. So I'm on the national board as well.
And Leah and I are members of the Missouri chapter, and I'm on the board of the Missouri chapter, and I'm the vice president of the chapter's council.
All right. Well, Kate, you've done this before, and I feel like at this point in time, like I already feel like an intellectual peon. So you want to finish off the murdering of my ego while we're introducing, and tell us all about yourself as well?
Sure. I am Kate Sheppard. I'm at Missouri S&T. My undergrad is in anthro. I do have a master's degree in Egyptian archaeology and then a PhD in history of science. And so I study the history of Egyptology. And I will say that what got me into archaeology was the film we are going to be talking about this evening.
I don't feel like you're the only one, and I
know
so much. This is so my great friend Lisa Overholzer actually did her PhD in archaeology at Northwestern, but it's a Berkeley undergrad. She and I have a long-standing conversation. The whole spiel I give about National Treasure and Indiana Jones actually comes from her, and so forth. But we'll get to that in here a second. I need to ask you though a more important question than about who you are and your work, which is actually what are you drinking tonight? So I see all of us have followed. We all like, okay. So
yes.
Julia, what do you got there? What do you have there over there?
So this is my classy, I just moved into this house and we don't have our cups out yet. Solo cup, but reusable plastic because I'm mindful of the environment. And it is Costco margarita.
Ooh.
Outstanding. Leah, what do you got?
A water bottle because I'm a junior scholar and I haven't earned that privilege yet.
You have here, but go on. I do appreciate the standpoint. I already know what Kate's drinking, but go on, Kate. What do you got?
I've got El Enemigo Malbec. Even though it is 95 degrees out, I will always go for the dark red wine.
Oh my gosh! So Malbec is my grape of choice. I am not drinking it tonight. I have a very lovely Penfolds from Australia.
Ooh.
I've been drinking a lot of New World cabs lately. I don't like French cabs, or I do. I like Bordeaux, but I really prefer my cabs to come out of Australia, or excuse me, out of California or Australia. I almost bought some Chilean cabs the other day, but I love Penfolds. Like the way they cut. Yeah,
I'm gonna try it.
The first bottle of wine I ever had was a €2 bottle of Bordeaux I bought in Paris when I was studying abroad. And it was the greatest thing I've ever tasted and probably will have ever tasted.
Yeah.
I mean, you went off the deep end like right away. Like just it would be like if your first podcast were this one. So I'm just saying, so okay. Now that we've got this. Is this your first? This isn't your first pod.
Yep.
Leah's like, yeah. Like Julia, you've been all right. Okay.
This is my first podcast.
Oh man,
what a way to welcome you.
On your CV now, like junior scholar no longer. Yeah. We're about to dive in. You're welcome to a whole new world. Okay. All right. We're talking about, I'm watching this movie last night and I've had this thought. I think I'm not going to call it Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark because that's bullshit. Because that's a post-Disney thing. It's Raiders, right? I'm just not noticing.
It's Raiders.
It's Raiders. Right?
Sorry.
This is a perfect movie.
It's Raiders.
All right.
And the Indiana Jones part. I mean, again, they renamed it to the whole series.
It's not necessary, right? We all know it's Raiders, right? It's just a perfect name. Okay. All right. Let's start in with some basic ideas. We're talking Raiders of the Lost Ark tonight, but we'll talk about the other films in this series as well. Archaeology, history of archaeology writ large, stuff like that, and anything else under the sun. General feelings towards this movie. This is not a new film. This film comes out in 1981, if I recall correctly. Oh my God, this movie is 43 years old. Like, if I were growing up in the 80s, I would not want to watch a movie from the 1940s. And this movie, I will watch this movie all day. Like it's like last night, I was like, told my son, get in here. We're watching Raiders. Like, okay. General thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark before we start jumping in. How do we feel about this movie? Kate and I started talking about doing this pod. She's like, I got friends who will want to talk about this. What are your thoughts on this?
We're all nodding aggressively.
Let's go.
Right
well,
now.
All
Yes.
right, Leah, as the junior scholar who is sober longest here. By the way,
my general feelings about Raiders and Indiana Jones specifically. He is a spectacularly bad example and bad representative of what archaeologists actually do.
How dare you?
But that's not to diss on Indiana Jones, though, because like as with anything, there are positive and negative aspects of his story, and the bad aspects I feel are the extremely racist portrayals of indigenous people and other harmful stereotypes, which we'll get into later. But also it normalizes looting. But there are also merits, such as, I don't know, fighting Nazis, the wonder and amazement that come with stories and telling stories of the past and the adventure of travel, and the general excitement surrounding archaeology. So there's good and bad, and really quick, that's my opinion about the good and the bad.
Julia, what you got?
It is one of the greatest action adventure movies of all time. Period.
Yes.
I mean, yes, there are problems. Yes, it is not a perfect movie, and everything Leah said is accurate, but it is also just one of the most fun, well done movies, right? Like the chase sequence sort of halfway through the movie is like one of the best, if not the best chase sequence ever filmed. And there are just so many beats in this film, and the way the cinematography and just, I mean, it really is just the perfection of Lucas and Spielberg together in the 80s at a time of their height. And also, Catherine Kennedy and all these other amazing people and all the actors, this cast is stacked. All these actors, even who played small roles, became just amazing, amazing performers. So to me, this is one of the best of all time. Top 10.
Yeah, it's in my top 10 favorite movies for sure. Yeah, as well.
It is my number 4 favorite movie of all time.
Number 4. I have a number.
I have a full-on list. Yeah, absolutely. It's number 4.
But doesn't it change daily?
Oh man, sorry. All right. So yeah, actually, but and I count like the first 3 as a single film, much like I count the Holy Trilogy of Star Wars as a single film. Right? You can't separate Raiders from Temple, from Last Crusade.
Well, it's good to know that you're a liar and a cheater from the very beginning of this podcast. That's good. I
only lied about being a thief.
Putting all the movies into just the number 4 spot. That's an interesting way to play this game. I like it.
I am now the historian of film, and these are the rules that we can set.
Sure.
Kate, what do you think?
I think it is a perfect movie for a lot of reasons. So when I can pull my brand new 10-year-old, because he just turned 10 a couple weeks ago, in and say, we are watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and he is stressed from the get-go, and also laughing at the appropriate points, and worried about the monkey who died, even though the monkey was a Nazi. Like, these are the things, these are the emotions, right, that we all should be having. But this is our comfort movie. And so we just watch it, and we're laying there just watching it like this, but he is into it. And so when I rewatch it like that with him, I'm like, this movie is perfect. It's action, it's adventure, it's comedy, it's romance, and there's the archaeology, of course, that stresses me out too, and we'll talk about that soon. All of the things where I'm like, no, don't smash that.
Don't set them on fire.
Right?
I was at Trader Joe's the other day because I live in Colorado, and they had dates for sale. I was like, no, not doing it. No, I can't eat dates. No, not the monkey. No.
Dates. You eat them.
You do the thing, and then it's just like, bad dates.
Yep.
Right? To this day. It's like Jack in the Box. I won't eat there. No, absolutely not. I won't eat dates because of Indiana Jones. I'm scarred from the eggs.
Yeah. I was telling my partner that poison dates, man, if anyone wanted to kill me, that would be the way to do it, because I love the sort of, I don't know what kind they are. There's probably an Arabic word that I'm unfamiliar with. The Medjool Rutab dates that you can get in the Dakhla Oasis, and there are date groves all around the dig house, and you can pick them off the trees, and just so good, so
Well, yeah,
good.
I am from Kentucky. Like the Oasis is like Cracker Barrel for me. Like this would be like us talking about biscuits and gravy. Like, oh my God, this is like Indiana Jones and the like search for a book in Mississippi. Like it's something along those lines. Oh my God, right?
Gotcha.
So, yes.
I can't think of dates and not think though of the Robin Hood Men in Tights scene where he goes, "Care for a date?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, sure." And he goes, "How about next Thursday?" And just cracks himself up. And it's just every time I offer someone a date, I want to do that.
Agreed.
Another film coming. I'm like, Julie, I'm already just cataloging in my head. I'm like, check. Like just
So anything Mel Brooks. I met Mel Brooks and he kissed me, but that's another story.
That's great.
Oh wow. Okay.
I haven't heard this story.
A consensual kiss.
Okay. Spaceballs we got lined up at some point in time. So
that's good.
I have my signed autographed copy of Spaceballs. I can bring props next time.
Yeah. It's like,
I'm sorry, nothing as good as the headpiece to the Staff of Ra. Hello.
Yeah, I mean that is pretty good.
That's nice.
Okay, can I tell you guys? Okay, we're going to get into Harrison Ford here. You know what? Let's just go ahead and do it now. Is Henry Jones Jr. the worst archaeologist in the history of the world?
No.
Almost.
Renee Belloc.
Correct.
He does his best with his students. When he's in the classroom and he's like,
they are fond of him.
Oh, they are. And when he's like, hey, X never ever marks the spot. Sometimes, danger to life and limb, although that does sometimes happen. I will say, however, that he does lead them down a really old path when it comes to some of the theory that he's teaching them, even in the 30s. Because when he's telling them, here's what we're reading, I'm like, that is not correct for the time.
They're reading Petrie,
for
right?
real. Go on.
Go ahead. They read Petrie. They read Petrie in the Grail, in Holy Grail, and then in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he tells the kid in the library he needed to start reading Glyn Daniel, which was already not what they should have been reading. And we're in the movie theater, and I was like, "That's wrong."
Of course.
Yeah. But he does his best, I think, with his students to steer them down the path to go to the library. But then he's like, "That's not what I'm gonna do."
Right.
So, Dr. Kate Sheppard, why is it wrong that he assigns them Petrie?
So Petrie is doing good work in these places, and actually he should have assigned Petrie if he's going to Tanis, because Petrie was actually the one who had been doing Tanis, not Ravenwood, as we all know is, fictitious. But Petrie did the first important work on Tanis, or now Kratos, I think is how you would pronounce it. I don't know, in Greek. But anyway, yeah.
All right.
And also, Petrie was a eugenicist.
Okay.
That's what Leah was going for.
Yeah, so Petrie was racist.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. There's a lot of that going on in the 30s, right? Yeah. I found myself the other day here in Colorado Springs. There's a store. It's like a bougie men's fashion store, and they had the full-on jacket, the pants, and I have to tell you, I was like, let me just drop $1,000 right now.
$1,000.
Well, the jacket and the pants, or the shoes, right? It's just something. The khaki and like the sandstone shirt. It's like it's a timeless look. Mm-hmm. Also, Harrison Ford, a timeless. That was the problem. I looked in the mirror and thought, no, it's not happening. So so there was.
Well, but you transform into Harrison Ford when you wear it. You put on the jacket,
and when you put the hat on, it's the hat.
Yeah, it's the
I
hat.
dated someone for a while. I used to beg her to let me buy a fedora, and she was like, absolutely not, because I think only Harrison Ford can do the. Leah's saying no. Is it only a Harrison Ford thing? Why? Because I want to bring the fedora back. Like even in dress situations, go the Cary Grant with the suits. No. All right,
let's do it.
Listen, I think so, but this is just me. I will say, last night Miles asked me, "Mom, how does Indiana Jones never lose his hat?" because he's always grabbing it at the last moment.
this?
It's always staying on.
Do you know they actually try to staple to his head at times?
Did they seriously?
Yeah. There's if you look at the outtakes during Last Crusade on the tank scene when he's fighting on top of the tanks, there's some outtakes there where he's quite literally trying to staple the hat into his head. And there's some real questions here in the film because I was watching this, at this point in time, I've abandoned all critical engagement with this film. I will not I'm not going to try to criticize this film. Absolutely not. Like I was watching Horizon. I was like, oh yeah, that's fucking wrong. God damn it. No, this absolutely. However, what happens to the hat when he swims from the boat to the sub? Like, how does he get the hat back? Because the next time we see the hat is like at the very end when they're walking out with him and Marion and so forth. Because he doesn't have the hat the rest of the show when they're on the island. So
he grabs it and sticks it down his pants. I think that's what happens.
It's got to be.
And then it's just hanging out there, you know.
Or because they'd have to go back to England before they go to the United States, and so maybe the captain of that boat. They met up with the captain of the boat, and he gave it back to him. That captain was a good captain.
I like that captain. He's very smooth. Like, okay, that's the other thing. Like everybody in this movie, even Belloc, is just fucking smooth as shit, right?
Yeah.
Although I was tweeting last night, I was like, Belloc totally was vaped, right? He would totally have a vaping pen right now, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
yes,
100%. I mean. He brought his own hanger, you know. Of course, he's going to. Yeah, I mean, no one is as classy as someone who brings their own hanger. Apparently, that also was a joke that they tried in an earlier movie and failed, and so he kept. I can't remember. I think it was Spielberg who kept trying to push it into like all of his movies until it finally landed as a joke, which I still don't know if it landed correctly.
That wasn't Belloc who brought his own hanger. That was the Nazi.
Oh, that was. You're right. No, you're right.
If you're working,
Belloc had
Nazis,
his own vodka label.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, from the family. I thought it was right. And here's the other thing.
I thought it was like Grappa or something.
Yeah. But here's the thing I love about this series. I want to get your thoughts on this. One of the beautiful things about this film is that it doesn't spoon feed you everything, which is a problem that Lucas had later on when he was doing the Star Wars prequels. All you get are these illusions, this relationship, and we're going to get into the Indy Marion thing and the Abner thing, right? Indy and Renee Belloc clearly know each other, have known each other for decades at this point. Probably had a frenemy relationship at some point in time. Maybe Indy always thought he was a dick. But
enemies to lovers, I'm just saying.
Oh my God.
You're presuming they weren't lovers already, which I think it might be more of a, you know.
Fair enough.
Are we about to start our own like Indiana Jones like fanfic? Is this about to become 50 Shades of Khaki at some point in time? Is that what we're going for?
Possibly.
That was basically our text chain last night, so we might as well bring it in.
Yep.
I have an important question for you. I'm gonna ask this for Kate. I'm gonna put Kate on the spot since it's the second time on. Kate, can you spell archaeology for me?
Archaeology. Oh.
You know what I'm about to do, don't you?
Yeah. ARCHAEOLOGY.
This is why we are friends. So, Leah, Julia, I don't know if you know, I work for the Forest Service in my daytime job as a tribal liaison, and this podcast is absolutely not endorsed by the federal government whatsoever. But we also work with a lot of archaeologists, and I see emails coming across, and they spell it without the A.
No.
Can you guys explain to me why that A is? I mean, I know why the A is so important, but can we talk about why that A is so important and why you can't have archaeologists? It just drives me fucking. Does this
you can't have archaeology without an A, and then another A.
Wrong, right?
And then another one, right? Well, so in Greek, ancient Greek, it's archais, which means a beginning or a rule. So you're going to the beginnings of human civilization, whatever we define that as. So in Greek, the letter arche ends at A sound is the letter eta, which is the long form of an E. If you wanted a short form of an E, it would be an epsilon, arche. So it has to be AE because it's a long vowel in ancient Greek. It's a long vowel in British English, and therefore it should be a long vowel for us today. Thank you. Case closed.
could you do me a solid and write to the Department of Agriculture? Because that would help a lot.
Yeah.
Every time I see it, it just drives me nuts. But that actually transitions really well into the next question, because Kate and I talked a little bit about this when we did the Mummy Pod, which is I really actually want to get into the history of archaeology as a field. You know, Kate's got this beautiful book coming out. Like, I've been raving on this. You see me posting about it nonstop. I'm not bullshitting you.
He does.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited for this book.
Dude,
you have no idea.
So fucking cool, right? Oh my god, it's so great, right? But can we talk about the not about what archaeology studies, but about the study of archaeology? Like, where does archaeology come from as a field? So essentially, if you're listening in right now, one of the things I want to get into is not just just assuming like, oh, Indiana Jones is an archaeologist, right? Okay, cool. The fuck does that mean? So, you guys want to talk about where the field of archaeology comes from, and actually maybe even bring us all the way up to like where it was in the 1930s and maybe where it is now. Go. I'm going to drink.
I'll start with the fact that archaeology, I would argue, began in antiquity, right? So you have this, if you're thinking about Egyptomania in particular, the sort of obsession and appropriation of ancient Egypt, the Romans were the first, you know, maybe you could argue the Ptolemies, but really the Romans were the first who brought back spoils. Spolia comes, you know, is where our word spoils comes from. They brought back obelisks to Rome. There are more obelisks now
50.
standing in... Yeah, there are more obelisks standing in Rome today than there are in all of Egypt.
Oh, Jesus.
So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Still standing, right? So many have fallen and such. And many have been stolen and put in, you know, or gifted to New York and Istanbul and Paris. And so, but yeah, so the Romans themselves were sort of obsessed with Egypt and sort of, if you think about this as a sort of metaphor or, I don't know, a one line I kind of give to a lot of my students is we are closer in time to Cleopatra and Augustus and Julius Caesar than they were to the pyramids of Egypt. And so we're talking about an ancient culture of the pyramids about 3,000, 3,200, you know, 2,700 BCE, that sort of this early Egyptian civilization is forming. And so for the Romans, that was this ancient culture. It was kind of like us studying ancient Rome. And so I would argue in some ways the Romans were the first, maybe not archaeologists in the sense that we define it today, but some of the first folks who were really invested in reconstructing the history of ancient Egypt, at least as it relates to Egypt. And then you all can take it from there.
I'd say it goes back before that, to be honest, because, I mean, you've got the king's lists in Abydos, you've got all of this interest in ancient Egypt for those who were more ancient. So I know Jason Thompson argues that the first Egyptologists were, you know, ancient Egyptians.
Yeah, maybe third intermediate period. I can think of a number of pharaohs from the third intermediate period and the late period who want to revive monuments, build on top of them, uncover them from the sand, add their own inscription underneath the one that is already there, and understand the inscriptions that are already there. What have my predecessors said? And then add their own,
Well, the Ramesses era has an era that's in ancient Egyptian, it's rebirth. So it's a renaissance. And so it's in the moment of the late New Kingdom, they're saying we are going to sort of look back into the ancient past of our lineage and sort of articulate it for the modern moment. So it was actually in the moment called rebirth, the sort of era of rebirth.
I want to ask you a question here, because the Egyptian civilization goes back so far. How far back do we say? I hate to do this. The Egyptian civilization goes. It's thousands of years.
I would say roughly 3,200 BCE is when we first have writing. So if we're talking about history with a capital H, and we're thinking about sort of the textual literary tradition, it starts about 3,200. If we're talking about, you know, earlier than that, then we definitely go back much further. There's lots of cultures in the area that becomes Egypt that has sort of shared symbolism and, you know, ceramic practices that, you know, that have continuity into those sort of later stages. And then Egypt unifies about 3,000, 2,900 BCE. So it becomes a sort of unified state at that time. And really then we can start talking about civilization as this sort of kingdom, right? And the sort of even though we say singular, of course, it's not entirely singular and homogeneous, but at least on paper, right, or in stone, on papyrus, it is a unified kingdom.
All right. Well, we'll come back to this when we do the Stargate episode, but can we definitively say Egypt was not founded by aliens?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make
No
sure.
aliens.
Unfortunately,
All right,
it'd be super interesting.
Here's my question.
But
do we get a sense of, when this field of archaeology begins, say, amongst the Egyptians and so forth, and later amongst the Romans? And because as an American historian, one of the things that I am fascinated with is how memory plays into identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is so much, obviously, we've all been paying attention to what's going on in the United States the last week. There's so much about the United States that's devoted to this ideas of the founders and what they intended and things like that. So I'm kind of wondering, are these Egyptians, do we have an idea, like, what's the motive behind the archaeology? Is this an idea of like, is this founder worship kind of thing? Is this we want to just understand where we come from? Like, do we get were these archaeologists writing or leaving their own stories behind about why they were doing what they were doing?
Well, so in antiquity, sure, but I mean, in the more recent past, I think, Kate's and Leah will know a lot more about that. But yeah, I mean, they are writing some of this down. Now, we don't have the records for antiquity. No one really ever explains anything to us in antiquity in a way we want. They never really say, well, this is why I'm doing it, and let me lay it out, and let me give you 3 or 4 documents that you can confirm that are contemporary. They're not nearly that nice, but there is a sense of hero worship. So they're pointing to me, Leah and Kate, because I study, and my first book was on something called apotheosis, which is where someone dies and then is deified by their local community, right? And so it's this practice of having sort of folk heroes, in the same way, in very similar ways to our founding fathers, right? And many of these men were sort of local politicians, leaders who then upon death became gods and were revered as gods by their local community, in part because of that efficacy, because of that potency and power they were perceived to have in life. They thought that would continue into death, right? And it's all about social capital and sort of, social distinction and setting yourself up as being more important. And, when I talk to my students about the pyramids of Egypt, I talk about, the Egyptian kings, technically not pharaohs at the time, but kings wanted to basically put their name on the largest thing on Earth. And it was the largest man-made structure on Earth until 1300, right? Until 1301. So for thousands of years, the pyramids of Giza were the largest man-made structures on Earth. And that's not too unlike politicians today who want to make very large, tall buildings and write their name atop of it, right? It's a similar sentiment of wanting to literally etch our memory into stone because we are so insecure that we'll be forgotten. And the Egyptians were very insecure that they would be forgotten because that was ultimate death.
Holy cow.
And that's true of the archaeologists then who were sort of excavating their past as well. There was this sort of obsession with being remembered, and sort of having your life continue through that memory, because memory is what gives you power.
Was there a sense, I don't want to turn this into an Egypt thing entirely, but I also, let's go. Was there a
Why not?
sense, right? Was there a sense of an afterlife for Egyptians? You talk about the idea that death is final. Is there another space of existence that people, as they die, I mean, we've seen all the sarcophagi and things like that. What happens, Julia, what happens when we die?
Yeah, well, I thought you should know the answer because you guys just watched The Mummy and you know that etched on the inside of the sarcophagus is death is only the beginning. And that comes from an ancient Egyptian text, right? And so for the ancient Egyptians, the hereafter was very much like our world, right? So it was the field of reeds. It was, my old professor, Jim Allen, described it as, sitting along the Nile with a cool breeze and some shade. And as someone who grew up in San Diego, I was like, oh, I know what that feels like. It's sitting on the beach with it being 72 degrees and some shade, right? It's paradise. And that's the afterlife. And then you have all of these workers in your tomb that do all the work for you. So none of the stuff you don't want to do, you don't have to do your chores, and you just get to enjoy drinking beer, fishing, fowling, hanging out with friends. And so there really is. And that's why everybody always says, right? The ancient Egyptians weren't obsessed with death. They were obsessed with eternal life, right? And that really is. And I think there's something to that. So I think because the pyramids are these enduring, unlike anything else, features in the landscape that you cannot sort of ignore, there is this sort of obsession that people ancient Egypt becomes something more than just studying, ancient Mesopotamia or studying, the Phoenicians or anything else. People really get drawn to Egypt, I think, because of their investment in life after death, because they have this sort of enduring quality, and because their monuments, literally stood the test of time. And I know Kate could speak to this, that, the Victorians would, ingest, literally eat mummies, mummified human remains, because they thought that it could provide, vitality because of these, Kate, you could probably explain the reasons why better than I can.
No, I can't. I mean, you did it, right? Like, it wasn't for taste, but there was status, but it was
How do you
also
know?
like, but I don't. You are correct. But yeah, and like sort of Julie's bringing in, the Victorians had this obsession with death and what happens after we die, right? And so their obsession with understanding power and a long life and a good afterlife really connected them to the ancient Egyptians, and they just sort of subsumed, right? They just dove right in, basically. And so that's why I think, you get a ton of interest in ancient Egypt during the Victorian period, at least in Britain.
And in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. I mean, that's also why Hitler was, in part, why Hitler is obsessed with archaeology, right? Because he was fairly, consumed with archaeology and sort of trying to identify what he thought was the sort of pure Aryan race of the past, right? And he wanted to connect this
One could
race.
say he wanted to make Germany great again.
Interesting. Yeah, I think one could.
I think I've heard that somewhere before.
Come to HATM for subtlety.
That sounds familiar. That sounds very familiar.
I know, I'm from Missouri, so I haven't heard that before. So I'm curious where you guys are hearing that from.
Not on the jacked up dually driving around,
I think that's why I saw a bumper sticker somewhere. Yeah.
Somewhere, because that's where they were. I want to ask you this: where does American archaeology come into play? Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones. We know his father is an American. Well, his father's actually not American.
Medievalist.
Right.
Medievalist.
But also Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. God damn it!
A little British.
It's just wonderful. So where does American archaeology by the 20th century come into play? We obviously, over time, start to develop. I'm setting you up, Kate. Like, we start to develop our own fields and our own disciplines, and have our own, I guess, pantheon of scholars who are influential. So, July 1st, you may not know, was the day that Indiana Jones was born. July 1st, 1899. So
I did not know that.
He doesn't. Absolutely. Right. So
yeah.
So we got to figure Indiana Jones, Henry Jones Jr. is in graduate school by the mid-20s, right? So where is he coming into play? Who is he reading, and how is he being influenced as an archaeologist in the early 20th century?
Okay. This is my jam. He is at Chicago, right? So he goes to grad school in Chicago. So he's working with James Breasted, because even though Breasted was an Egyptologist, he was working with everybody who was there, and also Frank Tarbell, who was part of the Oriental Institute, which is now the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures. But back then it was Oriental Institute. So he's working very specifically with them. He also would have known Caroline Ransom Williams. He would have been working with Harold Nelson a bit, I think. And there's another person whose name I can't remember. But anyway, so he would have been at Chicago. Like, they were the center of American archaeology, and especially Egyptology, for a really long time. I think they are one of the main centers for American Egyptology. So that's who he would have been studying with. And I was thinking about this last night, actually, because the Raiders takes place in like 35 or 36. Mm-hmm. And that was right when James Breasted had died. Like, Breasted died at the end of 1935, like in a surprise. He died of strep throat. And they like cured his malaria, but in 1935, before antibiotics.
Okay.
And George Washington. George Washington died of strep throat.
Okay, you would think as an Americanist I would know that, but I'm about to hear a whole bunch of shit from Craig Bruce Smith. But go on.
Okay. Yeah. So like, so I was wondering if they weren't putting, and if I had been a consultant on the movie when I was 2, this is what I probably would have told Spielberg to do. But like, Ravenwood sounds like a mix between James Breasted and Flinders Petrie as like a person, but neither of them had a daughter that would have been old enough for Henry Jones Jr. to have a very inappropriate relationship.
Like, was she
with.
old enough to have a relationship?
So was she old
we're gonna
enough?
get into
Right.
that in a second.
No.
We're gonna
Okay,
have
we're in a second.
we are gonna have to ruin this at some point in time and talk about why in 1981 maybe it was okay to. Okay, I don't want to ruin this series. Okay, here's my question though. One of the things, and I want to get into this because this is super important, certainly to, and I don't want to speak on the part of the communities that I serve or that I work with in the Forest Service and the tribes and stuff like that, right? But there is a real debate on the extractive nature of archaeology, and one of the things we hear Indy talk about, say over and over again, especially in Last Crusade, is this belongs in a museum, right? So can we talk about maybe, especially by say 35, where the mindset was amongst archaeologists of this is a colonial practice in a lot of ways. Black Panther famously points this out in the opening, in the very opening scenes there, which is just beautifully done. Can we talk a little bit about maybe the shadiness of archaeology as a discipline? I promise you guys, we will talk about the movie at some point in time, but can we talk a little bit about like where this field is, the ethics of it in say the early 30s, the racism involved? Hopefully that's changed, but kind of go from there.
Can I go again?
Go for it.
Okay, good. So in the 30s, especially in Egypt, and I'm going to say Egypt because first of all, that's where we're all
right.
That's where we're all living, and also that's where Indiana Jones is working in this movie. So by this point in time, Egypt has technically been independent for about 13 years, and they were not letting stuff out. They really tightened everything up. So the fact that, I mean, the Germans, of course, the Nazis are moving in and they just take everything no matter what. But that would have been very difficult for them to do, even as Nazis, to get that stuff out of Egypt in 1935. So removing things from Egypt by 1935 was practically impossible, and like very few people were able to do it. But before this, basically, France and Britain had signed this Entente Cordiale, which was in 1904, which they said, okay, Britain was like, the French, you can do the Department of Antiquities, you can make all of those rules. In Egypt, we basically get everything else. And they did this thinking, and there was other stuff, of course, but like for Egypt, this is what they were talking about. Because they thought they were going to be there for another 150 years, right? So they were like setting this up to go, we are just going to take all of this stuff. And the French and the British, you've got Belloc in here as a French Egyptologist. And the thing is, they were not very, at least in the 1915-ish to 22, when it all fell apart for the Westerners, but like Egypt actually got a say by 22. They were not very amenable to sharing a whole lot of stuff, or to allowing the British or Americans to just sort of dig wherever they wanted, which is what had been happening in most of the second half of the 19th century. So I'm kind of going backwards here, but like second half of the 19th century was like a free for all. I mean, they were using dynamite. They were having gunfights. They were fist fighting each other at excavation sites. And then it gets more contained and more regulated as we move forward in time. And by 1922, the Egyptians are like, you guys are like, you're done. You are done fighting over this stuff. It's our stuff. Like, come on. So by 35, I think the Nazis would have bullied their way in, but it would have been really hard to get stuff out. Sorry, that was a long thing to say.
No, it's perfect. When I talk to other archaeologists and they refer to the good old days, now I understand, was the gunfight days of archaeology in the late 19th century. But I actually want to go back to the first opening of the film. I want to get into, because we don't start in Egypt. We start in Central South America and kind of go from. This is one of the most perfect.
There were, I think, the mountain that's shown, which also
Yes.
most beautiful transition from a logo into the beginning.
They
of the
do
movie
this throughout the
of, like,
series.
So beautiful.
Last night he goes, that was so cool.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah.
And apparently they had, like, so it's a Hawaiian island, right? It's a Hawaiian mountain. So that part was filmed in Hawaii, and apparently they just were literally driving around the islands for like days trying to find the perfect mountain that like looked enough like the logo. So technically I guess we're in Hawaii, but yeah, I think we're supposed to be somewhere in Central South
Unnamed.
America. It's
Yeah.
kind of it's kind of broad, vaguely sort of referenced, and and the one note I had when I first was starting to watch the movie was, you have this, so Indy's there with two local guides, and one of the local guides gets startled by this sort of big totem, the statue that, sort of comes out from behind the vines as they're walking through the jungle, and he like screams and runs away in this very dramatic fashion. And I wrote down, like, I've never had a guide that is scared of anything. Like anything like that, might startle you, they've seen and seen worse. Like there's no way a guide, but that is a common trope, even in the Mummy ride at Universal and in sort of other sort of movies and settings, where you have this sort of, I don't know, this like narrative of the locals being scared of this magical thing that then the archaeologist is coming in to do the science and to do the real work to, correct it and study it from a sort of correct Western perspective, and again, I'm using, for those who can't see me, I'm using lots of quotes, and I'm being, I'm not actually believing those things and saying those things.
Yeah.
We gotcha. I also noted that beginning scene where the guide screams, runs away, and a bunch of bats fly out of the mouth of this architectural, I don't want to say like maybe deity. And I wrote down, oh, that's actually so interesting, because archaeological ruins actually often become habitations for local wildlife, which is a concern for conservation. I know I have some Egyptologist friends who cannot stand the birds of Egypt. I love the birds of Egypt, but they can't stand them because they roost in the architraves
I hadn't thought about
of the
this.
temples, and their excrement is not only unsightly, but also is actually very acidic and detrimental to temple walls or epigraphic inscriptions and things like that. So I noted that. I'm like, oh, if that were a site I was excavating, we'd have to find a way to deal with the local wildlife. And also see the ecological impacts of archaeology itself, because if you're clearing a site of trees, vines, bushes, just like even that can have an environmental impact. But anyway, bats flying out of the mouth reminded me of all this.
Right. I mean, these things are actually only archaeological ruins if humans are looking at them, right? For bats or snakes or any bugs or any number
Or spiders.
All the other species are just like, this is home. Right.
Yep.
So I hadn't even thought about that, Leah, and you pointed that out. And the thing that pops in my head is like those shows like on whatever, where it's like the world ends and then like the New York City becomes like whatever,
and all of the
right?
vines creep up in the overpass, and
Right. But that is also like, we saw this with like say Machu Picchu, right? Where it's like these cities, or Cahokia is another great example, just of where nature does what nature does. And
or the sands of Egypt that covers how many monuments are just lying under the sands of Egypt that we can't see, right? And I have, my new house here has a wisteria plant on a pergola, and that wisteria is like a very invasive, aggressive vine. And it like comes out away from the pergola towards the house. Like the vines reach out like an alien arm that's just, you can tell it's just like trying to eat and kill and consume everything. It'll like crawl its way up other trees, and then the trees inside will die because it'll take all of the like sunlight and nutrients that the tree would normally get.
But that's what it's biologically programmed to do.
Exactly.
Search for sunlight.
It's funny because we're talking about Egypt so much, and actually a really influential work on mine. So I came up as writing about indigenous and environmental history in graduate school and so forth. And actually, Alan McHale wrote this really terrific book about the animal and Ottoman Egypt, about how we should consider, civilizations as ecosystems and things like that. And, it's, Julie's like, nodding here, and I'm thinking about this as well, just the environmental aspects that are on display here that we're never really fully addressed. We'll get into how the hell the snakes are alive in the Tomb of Souls here in a bit. I mean,
that one I have an answer for.
Okay, I thank you because I have no fucking clue.
Because it had to be snakes.
Can I jump in? Can I jump into
Please.
the non sequitur, kind of? So
Absolutely.
It's related to the sort of ecological discussion, and it's the spiders. And one of the questions you messaged us, in sort of prepping for this was, what some of our favorite scenes in the movie. So I hope I'm not jumping ahead too much, scenes that really spoke to us. And the scene that spoke to me probably the most in this movie, now rewatching it, is in this early opening scene where they're covered in spiders. Because one of my greatest moments and sort of worst moments at the same time was working in Abydos, and we found we were excavating a hypogeum, which is a burial place, a Greco-Roman burial place for animal mummies. And so we had like a little, crevice that was open, and we crawled through, military crawled in, and it was all filled with sands underneath. So it was under the ground for us, but we were coming upon the ceiling, and then we were trying to clear away the sand. Right. And we're crawling through, and I'm claustrophobic, and trying to be like, this is the coolest thing in the world, don't have a panic attack. And I come out. I also have just like the worst arachnophobia. We're just giving everybody away all of our
another
secrets.
movie
Kill
you can
Leah
do
by
Julia.
dates. Yeah, like find, send me spiders, and we'll have to figure out what the other greatest fears are for Kate and Jason. And I came out of that hypogeum, and I was covered in spider webs, and luckily for me, though, dead spiders, because the spiders in that case were not alive, but just covered and caked. And then my colleague who's with me, I was like pulling off dead spiders and like spider webs from her back too. And so that moment in Indiana Jones where his guide turns around and is just covered in these giant tarantulas really spoke to me on multiple levels.
Ironically, that's Alfred Molina who played Doc Ock in Spider-Man. His first, I think his first film role.
Oh, is it?
He was
I know
so
it's
young.
an early one.
He was so young.
He's an infant in that film.
Yeah. Adios, Jones.
You throw me the idol, I throw the whip. Oh, but the whole thing. So I was watching like last night, still to this day, like when Indy does the thing with the idol, and then they pan back to Molina and he does the thing with his hands. Like it's a beautiful thing about Spielberg's direction, where you can you see where his hands are like this. He was doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Behind him, this is such a perfect. I think this is Spielberg's best film. I'm not shitting you.
I agree.
I think it's his best movie he's ever made, and he's done so many amazing films. Mm-hmm. I think Raiders is better. People will say Crusade. We'll get into this a bit. It's Raiders. I'm sorry.
Oh no,
it's Raiders, right?
That's just wrong.
Right. We'll get it. I don't want to ruin this. Any other thoughts on the opening scene all the way up till to the ball and the roll? I mean, we get Indiana Jones and we get Belloc. We get everything we need to know.
And I think too, because I remember sort of being a kid and watching that for the first time, whenever it was the first time I watched it, I was like 8 or 9. And you're just watching the ball come behind him. And in my mind, I was like, just like wait for the ball to go by you, then you can get out.
Then you're sealed in.
But then then he's sealed in. I know. Well, I know that now.
Okay.
I know that now.
So 8-year-old Kate doesn't know anything.
Clearly.
Go back and listen to NXS, Kate. Go on.
Excuse me. I just went to a New Kids on the Block concert a couple weeks ago, so I am there.
Jealous.
I'm there.
So jealous.
I'm there.
This is Gen X with Jason and Kate. Welcome. All right. Oh my God. All right.
Step by step. So yeah. I mean, but like, just like Jason was saying, you get everything about Indiana Jones that you need to know. He is fortune and glory. He is adventure. He will do what he needs to do to stay alive, including jump into a river, swim across it to an airplane that's already going by, and then sit in a seat with a snake.
Just know this
The pet snake Reggie, right?
Reggie.
Right.
I'm like, he
He'll
has
do
a name.
I'm sorry.
He has a name. Reggie.
Reggie. He'll sit with Reggie.
Reginald.
But there's so much about his character in that first 7 minutes that is just, it's perfect.
And you get it all. You get it all.
You get everything.
And can I add,
please?
He also doesn't get the treasure he's seeking. I think that is such an important point of who Indiana Jones is, right? He is in so many ways a failure what he's trying to do. And I think that makes him so relatable and accessible and someone that we just like love to love, because he isn't winning at every turn, right? He's kind of being thwarted, like, you know, he's being stopped and, you know, by Bollock and by, you know, all these like different, you know, even at work, it seems like he, you know, is the American, whatever, CIA, whatever, who comes and talks to him, you know, like they're not giving him all the information. And, you know, spoilers, at the end of the movie, you know, they have, you know, their top men working on stuff and it's not him. Like every sort of step, he kind of gets blocked a bit. And I think there's something to that, right? Like that special about Indiana Jones that's different from James Bond, right? Which is what this originally was going to kind of be. Like Spielberg wanted to do a James Bond film and instead he did this. And I think that's like a key difference in the James Bond character and the Indiana Jones, is that he doesn't get everything so easily. Like he's not he's like charming, but not suave in the same way that like someone like 007 would be.
Well, this is an important part, right? Because I've talked to my great friend, like Lisa Overholt earlier, and I'd read earlier about the influence of this film on archaeology. Of all the fields, you know, I think George Lucas had originally it thought about this as like, he's going to pick an archaeologist to be the quite literally swashbuckling guy. He's a pirate in a lot of ways. He's the good pirate, right? This film changes the field, right? I mean, archaeology is pre and post Harrison Ford, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's huge numbers, like, right? There's recorded massive numbers of students who are enrolling in classes and programs after this movie came out.
Right. I mean,
when I was an undergrad, I was in an intro to archaeology class as an anthropology major, because that's all I could do was the intro. And I had a friend who was sitting next to me and he was not into it. And we're taking notes one day and he's like, I thought this would be more exciting. I thought it would be a little more like Indiana Jones. Right. And I was like, this is like Indiana Jones.
Indy's
like,
quite literally saying X is not the smart.
You can go do that.
Indy's quite literally telling you, don't listen to me, right? In the classics, he's like, the work is done in the books. It's done with a trowel. It's, you know, he's quite literally, and that's what makes him an anathema. It was like, he's really the exception to his own rule. Let's talk about Marion.
Yeah. Love Marion. Love her in so many ways, right? Like, she is not a pure damsel. She is not a pure damsel in distress. No. Which I appreciate, especially when we look at like something like Temple of Doom, which I'd add, the filmmakers were going through nasty divorces when Temple of Doom was made, and think about the female character in that movie versus who is just a whiny bitch basically the entire time.
Who Spielberg later marries.
Right.
Yep.
I know.
He later said that was the only good thing about doing that movie is because he met his wife. Kate Capshaw. Yeah.
I don't have. Wow. I feel differently about Doom, but we'll get into it here in a bit. Okay. Leah, you want to go off on Marion?
No.
So,
please. I'm here. I'm here for all the Marion Ravenwood.
I find that I think she's sometimes to some extent put in the damsel in distress role, and she constantly resists it and resists it and resists it, and that's where she shows her strength, right? We're not quite in the 20 teens of you know, badass action women heroes. We're still in the 1980s, but it's a step in the right direction, the way she reacts to being put in these damsel in distress, quote unquote, situations, and her resistance to that, and her she steps up to the plate and participates in the action.
Yeah.
The first time we see her, she is out drinking. One of the coolest scenes. Like, talk about the way this film lays out her characters. She's hardcore. And then the next thing we know is
she's not a junior scholar.
No, she's decking our hero.
Yeah.
Saying, I've learned to hate you over the last 10 years. And then this is the shit that like flew over my head as a child because I'm not doing the math. And they're like, oh, there's a history. And then later on, wait, he was, okay, so he was, okay. So I spent last night doing this. 25 and 16 is about what I'm coming up to.
That's what I thought too. Yeah. I also
They wanted to make her younger.
That's also what I read.
George Lucas and Spielberg talked about making her 12 or 13 when they met. And someone said, no, that's really crossing a line.
Yeah, 16 you can kind of like,
16 in the 20s, it's like, well.
Okay, right. You kind of go, okay, because actually my grandfather was 22 and my grandmother was 16 when they got married. So you can almost kind of go there, right? But it's clearly when she says, I was a child, and he responds, you knew what you were doing. It's believable on both ends to a degree there. Like there is clearly, there's some innocence on the part of Marion, but also you never get a sense that Marion never doesn't know what she's doing. You get the sense, I think, in a lot of ways that she has always been wise beyond her years. But this film doesn't work
Probably
because she was thrust into these adult relationships and situations at a young age, right? She even said that her father would take her on excavation and would take her into the field and but also would kind of ignore her because she had to, he was always running off after the next big thing, the next treasure, and she was kind of on her own. And so I think, and I just have to add, in terms of Marion and the character, one of my favorite beats in the whole film actually comes from her. And it's in that scene where we first meet her. And then there's the fire, right? And we, the whole, her whole bar gets,
the bar fight
burns down. And there's this great bar fight. And this one scene, there's a jug, a barrel of beer or whiskey or something, right?
I live for this scene.
And before she goes, she opens her mouth, takes a big chug of beer or whatever, and then goes and fights. And it just that beat is so comedic. It's just comedic genius.
Absolutely. And again, they're coming after her for the headpiece to the staff of Ra, or what they call the headpiece to the staff of Ra. That, yes, exactly what Dr. Sheppard is holding right now. Which she wears around her neck. So again, they want the bad guys want something from her. This is what I meant when I said they put her in the damsel in distress role.
But she actively refuses it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, she does. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that makes Indy work so well in this particular film is that we don't have Indy without Marion. Indy is not able to get like I don't want to go off and say Marion's the star of this. She's not. But everything that Indy does, all of his character growth is through his relationship with her. Right? When he thinks he loses her, the forlorn loss of her, when he finds her again, his heroic journey of maybe looking out for someone other than himself is through his affection for her. And she's smart and she pushes back. And the decking of him, I don't want to ruin my favorite scenes in here, but they involve Indy and her, and we're going to get in that here in a minute.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to come back. We're going to come back to Indy and Marion. Actually, no.
No, wait, I do want to say, I want to say something about her too. And, when they catch them on the boat, right? They get her in the room and then Indy hides, right? So he can go save her. Cause if he gives himself up, they're both toast. But you have these Nazis. She's the only woman on the boat. You have these Nazis throwing her out of the room. And it seems silly, I think. Sometimes it may be like a comedic thing, but she turns around to one of them and goes, "Don't you touch me." And then he pushes her. To be the only woman on a boat to turn to a Nazi and poke him and say, "Don't touch me." Like, you don't do that. But Marion did it, and then of course they shove her again, but she's doing the only thing that she can do, which is saying, "Don't touch me." She can't punch this guy, or she could, but there's only so much she can do in that situation, and she does what she can.
And she very quickly plays along, right, on the boat too, when the the pirate captain is like, oh no, we're going to keep her. She,
We're gonna sell her.
we can have some use for her. She very quickly like isn't like, what are you talking about? Like she realizes like the game that he's playing right away, and she's she's wicked smart.
Yeah,
she catches on to it like that.
No, she is. Oh, in a lot of ways, she is the Princess Leia of this film. It's not a direct correlation, but it's awfully close.
I thought that too. I thought of Princess Leia as well because, again, damsel in distress, and she just constantly resists it and proves herself to be intelligent and powerful in her own way and finds her own power.
No, and listen, the amazing thing about Karen Allen was and is an incredibly beautiful woman. But the thing that always, like as a kid, and then as I grew up as an adult, things like that, would watch this film. Like I've been watching this movie for 40 some odd years. What attracted me to that character was how smart she is and how independent. I was like, holy shit, right? It's like, this is I don't want to sound wrong here, so forgive me if this sounds wrong. This is a woman.
It's okay.
Right? This is like, right?
She's not a girl, she's a woman. She's fiery and powerful and independent and a badass, and
like,
she can drink under the table.
Are we all crushing Karen Allen in this film? I mean, because
100%.
Okay, thank you. All right, good. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I do want to come back to it. Julie, you spoke a little bit about Hitler's fascination with the occult, but also Judeo-Christian mythology. You think, Leah, you're giving me the Southern Baptist in me coming out, because I grew up in the church back in the day, and now I'm a heathen with my family.
Good for you.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah, right. So, what's this fascination? Was this a well documented thing at the time? Because there's this great line. It's like when they're getting ready to bring the Ark, and one of the Nazis is like, really underscoring is like this Jewish performance. Do we get a sense, first of all, that Belloc is actually Jewish himself? And then also this idea that, wait a second, Hitler is devoutly anti-Jewish, obviously, as we know, yet at the same time, there's a fascination with this Jewish tradition. Like, what's going on here historically?
Yeah, it is interesting, that scene where he actually recites a line from the Torah, right? Or the line that you say before you open the Torah. But he does it poorly, and he doesn't include the last part of the line, which actually like honors the Jewish people. So it is kind of like an edited version of the prayer, which is also kind of interesting.
He's got the ephod on too, with all of the gems, all of the rocks in all of the right places and everything. Like, I mean, clearly Spielberg, sorry, continue, but yeah.
No, you're right. And so, but it is this interesting, I wouldn't say that Hitler or the Nazis were invested in ancient Jewish practice or not. There's this idea, though, that the knowledge sort of, I think, you look at, there's sort of mysticism around the medieval era, early modern, Athanasius Kircher and others sort of followed in what was called the Hermetic tradition. And these, I'll just name drop these things. People can go look them up if they're interested. But it's the idea that there is this sort of ancient truth that starts in antiquity in ancient Egypt, and that is realized completely by Christians or by Christianity and Jesus, right? And so it's less, I think, about sort of celebrating this Jewish history, but rather the antiquity that it is a conduit for, or that it speaks to, right? And also I think about kind of, in terms from the Nazi perspective, it's about claiming it and conquering it and making it theirs. Appropriating.
Power,
right,
and
that's
it's the power, right, that comes with it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but
because Mussolini did this too. I mean, there's film of him in his duds, right, in his like military uniform or whatever, taking a shovel and digging in the Forum. So they were very interested in claiming this ancient past, so that they could say, see this past that we are taking ownership over, we are as powerful as they are.
I mean, this is something that happens still to this day, right? There is, there's all these conspiracy theories and, quote unquote, pseudo archaeological ideas or theories about, how, the Americas were populated by a white sort of Western European race before indigenous populations. Indigenous populations murdered all those people, and so they're really the bad guys.
I haven't even heard that one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, modern Americans are reclaiming their ancestral past in this way. And you know, and so
Oh my
it's
God.
yeah, so there's a lot of, I think, no matter who you are and what sort of religion I think you belong to or don't belong to, I think there is a sense that people understand archaeology can give us some insight into truth, quote unquote,
Mhm.
Right.
into what, and
Right.
history is so much of who we are, right? And this claim of whose land is this and whose culture or heritage is this. Well, we can figure that out if we can excavate and dig up an artifact and then show you a tangible thing and say, look, this has, you
This
know,
is
this
proof.
this is a quote from Kanye on this vessel that was deposited here 5,000 years ago, right? And there is the proof. And so I think there is this like,
I'm good.
I'm glad I hit you with that one.
It got me.
Woo!
But yeah, I think there is this sense of digging for the truth, right? And I think
Mhm.
Hitler really thought that if he could find um, these artifacts of the past, then
Mhm.
it's kind of like George Orwell said, right, in 1984, like whoever owns, oh, now I'm going to butcher the quote, but basically if you own the past, you can rewrite the past, right?
Sure.
So if you are the manager of history, if you're writing the textbook, you in some ways can change what it says. And so I think that's what Hitler really and the Nazis wanted to do, was to write their own history. And so they were trying to find quote unquote proof that would support their
Yeah.
new narrative.
It's amazing you just said, Julia, because we're quite literally in the United States. We've seen like in Louisiana and in Oklahoma and other places where we're quite literally having all these school administrations posting actually Ten Commandments and all this other stuff, actively trying to
Right.
rewrite the narrative of American history, trying to re-own this as a way of, God damn it. All right, now we've made
And
this
it's a
serious.
reaction because people in the United States and let's say middle and South America, middle of North America and south of North America, felt, I think there's this reaction where they felt like the sort of emphasis and acknowledgement of slavery and the enslavement of so many people in our country and the murder of indigenous peoples and relocation of indigenous peoples and all these things somehow was taking away their quote unquote history, right?
Right.
And so there is this pendulum swings back to reclaim it in a way. And I think that's also what, if we're thinking about the 1930s, that's also what archaeologists are doing, because you have this history. You joked sort of earlier, can we say that the pyramids weren't built by aliens? And but that sort of actually is part of this narrative, right? Where the West wants to claim ancient Egypt for itself. The West, as in Europe and America, let's say, wants to say ancient Egypt is ours. There's no way a Black African civilization could have done this. It's more likely that aliens built it than a Black ancient civilization. Like that is the premise. And people, obviously, not everybody who believes in alien built the pyramid theories are racist, but that's the foundation of it, right? It's kind of like Petrie having this eugenics theories in some of his early archaeology, where he's looking at he's looking at skulls and trying to discern brain size and intelligence from the shape of people's skulls. It's the same sort of idea, but it's all about sort of trying to claim the past, the grandeur of the past for ourselves. And that's something we're fighting with right now with contemporary Egypt. A lot of modern Egyptians feel very sort of forced out of their own history, their own place, right, where they've lived for many, many generations. And there's a tension then between some contemporary Egyptians and some Black Americans in particular, but people of African descent sort of writ large, who also want to claim Egypt and Nubia as sort of their history. And that sort of continues today, where there's some tension between contemporary Egyptians who feel pushed out by white colonial efforts in the field, and Black Americans in particular, who also feel sort of pushed out of white colonial systems in America. And there's a sense of a zero-sum game where, there's only so many seats at the table. And that's why when you're looking at the archaeologists, it's Indy Jones, it's a Frenchman, they're all like white guys, and Salah, who probably is more knowledgeable than all of them and more talented than all of them, is the worker.
Well, that actually segues perfectly. And
Sorry,
Leah, no, please, that was amazing. Leah, you had actually hit on this a little bit earlier because I want to talk about Salah, right, and indigenous knowledge and things like that, and also representations on film here. So I grew up thinking that all Egyptians look like John Rhys Davies. Like this was like this, and I'm actually dead serious here. As a child, I was born in '77, so I'm 4 years old when this film comes out. I can't remember the first time I saw it, but it was an integral part of my childhood. Right, my childhood was Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Folks, no surprise that I became a historian. Right.
Yeah.
And yet, turns out I find out later in life that John Rhys Davis is actually Welsh and maybe kin to the guys in the Mines of Moria. But I want to ask you guys.
I would say, I'm like, how did that like blow your mind when you saw Lord of the Rings?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I tell you what, I was first of all, by the time
It's
Lord of the Rings
dwarves or
came out-
Egyptian?
Oh my gosh, right? Well, that's a whole other loaded thing when we talk about representation in those films.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you bring up some really good points here, right? Because the diggers, the people with the actual knowledge, are indigenous Egyptians, right? For lack of I don't know if this is the proper terminology here, but can we speak to representations on film? And I think the three of you all had ideas here, so I'll just let you riff here. Whoever wants to go here.
So I was thinking about this last night when we were watching it, and Indy goes to Sala to figure out about the head staff of Ra, and he's like, I know a guy. Okay, first of all, I think that is legitimate and accurate.
Absolutely.
Because
So
if
Egypt.
you
So Egypt.
it's so Egypt, because they know somebody, and the thing is, if they don't know it, they're gonna find the person who does know, and it's going to be amazing. You're going to have food. It's not going to be poisoned, and it's going to be amazing. But you go and you learn this thing, and then Sala is like, now I'm going to get you here. And like Indiana Jones, like he climbs down and he does the staff. But like
the staff of
Sala is the one who gets him. Yeah, like this.
Okay.
Oh,
the
this
Ra.
one.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. That one. Yeah.
Right there.
It's this, and he's like, ooh, and it goes through. So, but yeah, Sala is the one who is getting him all of the knowledge, and then getting him through the line, like getting him through these places so that he can go.
Right.
Truck, what truck?
But I was, do what?
Truck, what truck?
Truck. Yeah, exactly.
Sala's like, oh, this truck.
the one over here that you're going to chase with a horse. So, but then later on, like every time Sala celebrates, he sings a British military song.
I kept thinking that.
I am the monarch of the sea, right?
Oh my God.
And then a British lad is a soaring
I'm sorry. I love the
soul
part
as
where she
free
kisses
as a
him. When she's like, "This is for your wife. This is for the kids."
And then it honks.
I
He's
love
like,
it.
shit.
Oh, I love it.
But like, it's very much, that may have been like just Jonathan Rhys, what's his last name again?
Davies, I believe. Is that how it pronounce it?
Davies. That may have just been like the first songs that came to his head. But also, if this is Sala, and say Sala is 35 or 40, he grew up in the British colony of Egypt. So these are the things he would have learned. Yeah. Those are my thoughts on it.
Leah, what are you thinking?
I think that a lot of really harmful stereotypes are perpetuated in this film.
Don't you make me not like this movie?
Indigenous. What'd you say? Sorry.
Don't you make me not like this movie? Go on.
Well, you don't get me started on Shishak, aka Sheshonk.
All right. Do it.
But
in 680, come on.
Come on. Yeah, really. Absolutely not. But yeah, just the general stereotyping of the way an indigenous person looks, the way Egyptians act, the way they will break into song, for instance, as Kate just mentioned, like, and with such a high profile movie such as this, it can really perpetuate harmful stereotypes, like you yourself said, Jason. Like, you grew up thinking all Egyptians.
He was my model for Egypt. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and to a certain extent, that's not your fault. To a certain extent, if this is all the American audience is exposed to, especially as children and in developmental years, that becomes the fixed stereotype within our minds, and it's our job now as adults to fight against that.
I would like to add, I think it's important though also to remember and just sort of balancing that out, because like 100% agree with everything you just said, Leah. And I think
Mhm.
that sometimes people, and Jason, your reaction of like, well, don't make me hate this film, right?
Right.
I think we can, this is my opinion, obviously, and I very much could be wrong, but I don't think we have to not love things that are problematic, right? I think
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah.
there's so few things, if anything, that is perfect, right? That are
Mhm.
made by artists that are 100% quote unquote good people by our own mores and values. I think we have to responsibly evoke movie film artists. We have to think about how damaging are these people, and what is really the, yeah, we have to think it through, obviously, right? But I also think there's a sense of, we don't need to cancel every movie that
No.
is problematic in that sense. And I
Yeah.
think we can still have love and passion, and celebrate this movie. And also at the same time, like what we're doing, like we love this movie. And also it can be really problematic and hurtful and harmful to some groups of people at the same time. And we can hold
Mhm.
both those truths in our,
Mhm.
in our brain and in our hearts, and we can talk about them equally, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. And also doing what we're doing right now, which is having a conversation about the good
Yeah.
parts and the
Right.
bad
Doesn't that
parts
further?
in equal measure.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
So
And using it as an opportunity to
Mhm.
unpack these stereotypes. Using it as an opportunity. Yeah, all the more
Yeah.
reason to watch it
yeah,
again.
and I do
Yeah.
want to go on the record because I too am prone to busting out in songs. Ever since I made that NXS quip about half an hour ago, I've been trying to not sing "Never Tear Us Apart."
Dun
Like right
dun
here.
dun.
No, no, oh
Oh.
no. That's why I went to Prague a couple of years ago. I went to Prague. Did you guys ever see the video to "Never Tear Us Apart" back in the day? Like, oh
No.
No.
yeah, I would like.
Okay.
It's
I'm writing it
Writing
oh,
down.
it
oh my
down.
gosh, right? It's Michael Hutchins walking along oh, you guys are literally writing it down. Walking along
We're
the
literally writing it
river
down.
in Prague in like
Mm.
Cold War Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia in like 1987.
Yeah.
And so I went there and I was like walking along the same river, and it's like I don't have the hair or the looks or the long jacket, but oh my god, I was like, fuck yeah, absolutely. Never Tear Us Apart. Fletcher, if you're listening right now, our producer, please go ahead and put that into the podcast. Don't ask me. Oh, what a fucking song that is. Do you guys know this song? Never Tear Us Apart? It is my.
Never tear us apart.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't.
That part between Never Tear Us Apart, like that drum beat and the
The
stuff. Yes.
right?
Brilliant. Yes.
Thank you. Right. And then the whole like the angels, some of us don't know why. And he does it. Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
That's a song. Everybody, that just listen to that song.
It's a
Okay.
banger. As a
Leah's
kid
like,
say.
these Gen X folks are.
Leah, do you
I'm a
know?
millennial, thank you
I
very
did not want to
much.
presume on Leah to not know this song. First of all, how dare you guys?
Don't know.
You don't know the song?
Okay, next time, Leah, next time we have Oreos and tea, I am playing you this
You guys
song,
do
and I
Oreos
will
and tea?
dance to it, and I will sing it. Yeah,
Oh my
on an annual basis,
Okay.
we get together. We have tea, we have Oreos.
Literally-
this is what we do.
literally in arms reach on my hair under my desk.
Not sponsored by
You
Oreo.
gotta come.
I
You
felt
gotta
like
come next
Kate.
time.
I felt like we were all on the base like earlier, but I'm just so
Totally.
okay. All right, I want to ask you about your codfish moment. So, hear me out here, right? So when we were doing the series on Franklin, Joanne Freeman, we were talking about codfish and the fishing grounds off Newfoundland, and Joanne's like going off and off and off, and I love Joanne so much. Is there something in this film that spoke to you on like a personal level? Julia, you kind of hinted at it earlier. What's your moment in this film when you're watching it? When you're watching this movie, what's your codfish moment? What speaks to you?
So much, but so much. Where do we
Go,
begin?
Leah, go for it.
Uh,
When you weren't
oh,
listening
God.
to NXS like a normal person,
Right. Well, oh gosh. A lot of the scenes of the date palm trees, again, that chase scene, all the date palm trees, and they're at the very edge of the desert, and you can see the edge of the desert where the desert begins and the date palms end. It reminded me so much of Egypt, and it was tugged at my heartstrings. I can't wait to go back. But also, a lot of the great quotes in this movie come from Belloc.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I know which one
and
you're going
I
to say.
think
He does.
We all know
Which one is it?
the archaeological
Which one?
relic. All your
Oh,
life
No.
you've been pursuing.
No.
Oh no. Okay.
No.
Or archaeology's our religion.
Oh, go for it.
Oh, that's
You
awesome.
guys want to do
I
your
have
favorite
that
quote?
one written
Do your
down
favorite
as well.
quote because I asked you.
Archaeology. All right.
Go for it.
Indiana, we are simply passing through history. This is history.
Oh, such a great line.
And he doesn't blow up the ark because he says that.
Oh,
thing.
it's such
Yeah.
a smooth. Like Belloc is such a perfect villain because he really and Belloc knows this, right?
Oh.
He is the ideology. He is the shade, and he's teasing Indy. He's like, "You could become me." Right? Just a little bit
Exactly.
Because Belloc is an opportunistic villain. If he were not getting
Ideologue.
paid better by the Nazis, he wouldn't be
push.
working
No, he's
for
just a
them.
smart dude to get
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
That's what makes him so great because he's like, God damn it, Renee,
He's just
you
a
should be a good
hustler.
guy, right?
He should.
Right,
He should be on our side.
Julia.
Okay,
Oh,
so
go ahead, you
oh,
Kate,
good.
Whoever, I don't care. Kate, go for it.
All right, so I'm going to tell you my favorite line from Raiders and then my favorite line from the entire
That's
series. So
Okay.
my favorite line from Raiders, and I told this to my husband and son last night, and I don't know why, but we were talking about Marion sort of not being the damsel in distress. And it's when she is pretending to be drunk with Belloc, and she kind of grabs the knife, right? And they start laughing again. And she goes, well, and she is like making her way out, but she's trying to make it so that she's like, and she said, I really like you. I really do. And maybe under better circumstances, we could meet again. And then she turns around and she drops the knife. But I love that line because she's like, I'm stopping this now and I am leaving. Like I'm grabbing the knife and I'm going. And I just love how she delivers it too. She's just like, ha ha ha, well.
Is this the other thing? Do you not get some
Love it.
heat between Marion and Belloc as well?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Right? Like
Well, they're also both Indiana's ex-lovers, as we've established.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
there's
No,
that.
this is true.
There's that.
this is going to be a really
And-
weird triangle. Go on.
And I will share that my favorite line of the entire series is in Last Crusade, and it's when
Dogs that are asleep.
Henry Jones Sr. pops out of the tank and he turns to Indiana and he says, what does he say? You call this archaeology? And when he's like punching Nazis and stuff, and
Your
my-
article is called
I titled my article about it was my master's thesis, which was about Flinders Petrie and eugenics. I titled it, You Call This Archaeology? ?
Mhm.
Because he called it archaeology.
I love it.
Yeah,
So good.
that's my favorite line of the whole series.
Julia?
So
It's a good
one
one.
of my favorite lines is, I mean, I think those are actually really good. So I feel like mine aren't that good. I love Jones. I don't know, I'm making this up as I go,
So perfect.
because I feel like that
So
it's,
true.
again, it's so what makes Indiana Jones special, right? Because it's like he doesn't have a grand plan. He hasn't been figuring it all out secretly on his. He's like, I don't know, I'm just gonna figure it out. They're like, how are you gonna chase that truck? He's like, I don't know. Like,
I'm
I'm
making
just
this up as I
figuring it
go.
out. Yeah, which I mean, I love that. And then the other one is Sala, who goes, and I wrote it down so I would get it precisely because I always misquote it. Oh, my friends, I'm so pleased you're not dead.
Oh, I
I'm so
love that
pleased you're
line.
not dead
Love
when he
it.
walks into the tent.
It's,
I'm so pleased
Sala,
you're not dead.
listen, with the most recent film, it was so good to have Sala back. Like I just
Okay, I haven't seen the most recent
okay,
one.
we're not
Okay,
Mm.
I'm sorry.
Kate,
Let's
you
watch
just
it together.
determine
All
what
right,
the
Sala's back for 10 seconds before they kill him off. But yeah, okay.
Yeah. Shut
I
up.
mean, spoilers.
Julia.
Kate, you just determine what the last film of the month is on the Sunday night show on HATV.
Oh yes.
Okay, so
Let's do it.
we're doing Back to
Okay.
the Future 2 on Sunday
Okay.
because of Trump.
Oh, I just watched Back to the
This
Future
coming
Part 3.
Sunday.
And then we're
The
doing
Alamo
3
is
next
showing
week.
Back to the Future.
And then
Okay.
so all right, can I give you my favorite quote? I say this quote
Yes.
all the time, and I'm not
Please,
kidding.
please.
It's not the years, it's the mileage.
It's the mileage.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
It's so
good.
It's so perfect the way he
It's
delivers
perfect.
it, and I love. There's also there's that thing where they're on the boat together, and she does the where doesn't it hurt, and he does the here, here or here,
Here's not
Right,
so
here's not
much,
here. right here, and she kisses him, and he falls asleep, right? But then she says, to the effect of like, we never get we never get a break. Because despite all the shit, it's like these two people are supposed to be together. And we know that they don't end up together, at least for a long time. She goes off to marry somebody else. He lives his life before they find each other again. And I love the complications of this, of the reality.
Before Shia LaBeouf brings them back together.
I don't want to fucking talk about Shia LaBeouf. I hate Mutt Williams. I don't understand the love of Shia LaBeouf. I don't get it.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
He's good in Fury as the Cajun.
Oh.
Right? And I grew up in Louisiana.
But that doesn't mean he belongs in an Indiana Jones movie.
No, he doesn't. But fucking Mutt Williams. I'm so...
He does make Indiana Jones, Henry Jones Jr. say, this is intolerable.
You know what?
And that was...
You were going to like what Shia LaBeouf's character does to Indy in the last film, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say.
I'm excited to watch it. I haven't had a chance.
I want to ask you about historical contingency, because we're all historians, and God knows we do enough of this. It is well established that Harrison Ford was actually the number 2 pick for this role. Number 1 was Tom Selleck. Tom Selleck had the role.
Yep.
But could not get out of his...
so dreamy. Yeah.
Could not get out of his contract for
TV
Magnum
gig.
PI.
Magnum PI.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What happens? Can you imagine a world in which Tom Selleck is Indiana Jones?
Is on my shirt? No.
I can.
I'm on record with the guy
like
on your shirt being
mustache.
the most handsome man in the history of civilization. So go on.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I don't think so. I mean, because Harrison Ford was a known entity with Lucas in Star Wars, right? And so that's because he was like, guy. You can't put Han Solo in here. Yeah.
Because he is Han Solo. Indiana Jones and Han Solo
but he is Indiana Jones.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, they totally are. They're both, scoundrels and whatever, and they are attracted to smart and intelligent.
They both fall in
tough,
love with Princess Leia. We talked about this. Marion and Leia are the same person, right?
It's like the same dynamic.
They're fighting the evil empire.
Right.
Yeah,
and literally fighting the
evil
empire.
They're fighting Nazis, right?
I hear Indiana Jones say, I know, to Marion saying I love
greatest
you,
line in the history of film. I'm shit you not. Thank you, Julia, for saying that.
Yeah.
Most romantic line in the history of film, Harrison Ford. End of story. If someone disagrees, they're wrong. Leah, what do you think?
No.
Are you familiar with this what alternate timeline where Tom Selleck becomes Indiana Jones?
Yeah, and I mean,
I think he could have done it.
I can see it a little bit. I could see it.
I think he's got it.
Tom Selleck, he is very charming. I mean, I know Tom Selleck more from Friends than Magnum PI. That's my,
Did
that's
you not
my
watch
age.
Quickly Down Under?
My heart. My heart. You didn't see the shorts on Magnum PI.
Oh, I mean, I've seen them, but I didn't watch them growing up. Right?
Leah?
It wasn't part of my worldview. But I think he could have done it. I think he could have done it. It would have been very different. It wouldn't. I don't know if it would have. Yeah, I don't know if it would have spawned the same sequels. I don't know if it would have become, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been the greatest film of all time, but I think he would have done a good job, and I think it would have been great.
Could he not have pulled off that goofy charm? Because one of the you guys talked about earlier, right? Think about the fight scene at the airplane, right, where Indy gets slugged by the dude with no shirt, and he just drops on his ass. One of the great things about Indy is that there are some great deadpan humor moments in Harrison. Harrison Ford is actually acting his ass off, and it's so effortless in these early films that I think we might take it for granted.
I love the part where he gets off the submarine and he has to get the Nazi uniform, right? And it doesn't fit him. And so he's pulling it on like this. And then the commanding officer comes over and is yelling at him and he's combing like this. And he's like, I don't know. And he's acting like he doesn't know what's going on. And then he just punches the guy. And I just love his face, right? Because he's just like, oh.
Can we talk about the fact that he can actually kick somebody's ass?
He's making it up as he goes along. He's absolutely making it up as he goes along.
And
and you can see it. And it shows.
I do want to move on to some.
Yeah. What did you say? What did you say, Jason?
The fact that Harrison Ford, like Indiana Jones, can actually kick somebody's ass. Like the only guy in like the series that presents a challenge is the big muscle-bound Nazi guy. Pretty much every other time we see Harrison Ford in a fight, he's usually kicking some one-on-one. He's a good fighter.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, he shoots a guy. Like he just gives up at some point and is like, "Nah, I have dysentery. Let me just shoot."
That's
you.
Such a great scene, though, and the story behind that's even better.
The story right of that he was like so sick that everybody was so sick in Tunisia that they're just like, just shoot the guy. We can't get through this like scene.
But isn't that the perfect thing about the pragmatic nature of indie? How
exactly.
fucking smooth it is. Where he's just like, the dude's doing the thing. You're like, all right, sweet. And he's like, and he does the same thing we would have said, like, you have a pistol. And he just shoots it and just moves on.
To that point, I think there's a great homage to it. I mean, it's a little cheesy and, it's very very obvious, but I still think it's a really fun homage in Dial of Destiny to that moment, which I actually really enjoyed.
I actually really enjoyed that movie too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as good as the first three, but it's a fun film.
Right. But I'll also add that, Indy is having a hard time fighting this Nazi guy who I also love. This like Nazi guy just like walks out and is just like, I'm gonna get in a fight, and just like takes off his shirt. He's like, let's go. About it. He was like, fuck yeah. He's just like such a skin, right? He's like such a stereotypical skinhead. And then, but that guy also, I mean, is kind of a zombie because he dies earlier in the movie. It's the same actor, and there's a couple times that they do this where the same actor will play a couple different parts throughout the film. So
cool. I didn't catch that.
And can we backtrack for a quick second, Julia? Because you said you know why the snakes survive in the Well of Souls.
Yeah, because there's air down there, and there's totally like bugs and stuff. So he's down there, right, and he sees there's a giant crazy Anubis, and then he looks, and there's snakes coming through the wall, and they like knock through the wall, and then there's like a big hole that they escape from. So the snakes are just coming in from that hole.
Okay.
Yeah. They have oxygen.
So they're not resident snakes. They're migratory. They're working their way in.
They're hanging out there. And then I think what happens is they come into the wall and then they get kind of stuck in there, right? Because then maybe it might be harder to get out than it was to get in. It might be one of those things where they're kind of just like hanging out in there for a bit.
Can I just say that the Well of the Souls is my very personal scene because I remember the first time I saw that.
The thing where are you talking about when he goes into the? Are you talking about what part? Are you talking about with the snakes? Or are you talking about like when he discovers which part?
When he uses Anubis to knock over the wall, because I remember watching that, being 8 or 9 years old, and thinking, but what about all the stuff on the wall that he's not going to get to read or learn from? Like, I remember having this thought.
Like, if he didn't knock down that wall, Egyptologists would have known that there were advanced AI machines living in ancient Egypt because they would have seen the R2D2 and C3PO hieroglyphs.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That were etched on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I think my favorite scene in this is actually when he's with the staff. When he's because John Williams, Star Wars is probably his most famous score, but this has to be better. This has to be right there. And the scene where he's discovering where it's at, where it ties up with the sun comes up and it hits, and to this, like literally, guys, like I have got like you can't tell, like I'm getting the goosebumps on my arms right now because that's what this movie. This is a perfect film. Mm-hmm. This is a capital M movie. And just the music, I think everything.
Williams' score is the march is just so well done.
Oh, fuck. Just everything.
I think, I really, and apparently the story goes he had 2 different scores that he had been practicing with or sort of trying to figure out, and they were like, put them together and use both. And that's why you have these sort of 2 slightly sort of disconnected, like what could kind of feel disconnected.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Raiders music that then shows up in Holy Grail when they see the Ark, and he's like, that's the Ark of the Covenant. Are you sure?
Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
Are you sure?
No, that's one of my favorite. Okay. Good.
It's interesting that you mentioned that scene with the sunlight, because actually there's a temple in Egypt that I think inspired this, which is the Temple of Abu Simbel. And forgive me, I forget the exact date. It's one of the solstices, or is it Ramses' birthday?
Oh gosh.
Yes,
I mean,
I'll
knowing
forget.
Ramses, it probably is his birthday. I mean, that sounds
You
right.
The
know,
amount-
that's very true. He is an egomaniac. And so the sun comes through the hall of the temple, and hits the back wall. And that's where I think, I can't prove this, but that's where I think they got the idea, the inspiration for the staff of Ra, and using sunlight to project a beam onto a certain space.
So I do want to note, right? It does feel like they worked their ass off on the background research.
They
Like, we, as historians and scholars, we can sit back and say, "Oh, they didn't get this right." Guys, like, they were clearly they did the work here, right? We're all in agreement here.
They read some books
They
and
did
talked to
work.
some
Okay.
people. Yeah.
I want to ask you about another.
I mean, it's no.
Go ahead.
There's no Stuart Tyson Smith who did the consulting for Stargate and a bunch of other films,
Right.
and The Mummy included, right? So, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know if they consulted with someone, but I do think there's like some really good,
Mhm.
you know, and I thought, I swore I could have even heard when they were trying to say like remove the sand. I thought I heard somebody say shield, you know, which I think they like did, which is Arabic for remove, right?
Ooh.
And I think they did get some things like really, really right, and some things very, very wrong. But that's all part
Not
of
for the
fun.
lack of trying.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I get on my soapbox?
Please
Please.
Yeah.
do it.
So the whole concept, and they speed through this scene. It's when they're in an empty lecture hall, and Indiana Jones has the blackboard. It's the setup for the concept of the Ark, right? So he receives the call to action because of this intercepted Nazi telegram, I suppose, Tanis development proceeding. And Indiana has this amazing line: "The Nazis have discovered Tanis." And why is this a big deal? Well, because he says Tanis is a lost city. It's not. It was excavated by Marion 70 years before. And maybe Kate could talk a little bit about that. But the crucial point is that Tanis houses the Ark of the Covenant, right? And this is the setup. But how did the Ark of the Covenant get there? That's a question that the audience naturally has, is why is it in Egypt? Why is it in the Delta? Indiana says, oh, the Shishak, which is the Egyptian pharaoh known as Sheshonk, or I say Sheshonek, which is how it's phonetically spelled.
Tomato, Shishon.
Oh, we have a linguist on our hands.
That Sheshonk looted the Ark from a raid in Jerusalem and brought it back. And Tanis is one of the capitals of Egypt in what we call the 22nd dynasty, which is a very messy period in Egyptian history, which is currently being revised and rewritten by my colleague here at UC Berkeley, Jason Silvestri. But anyways, that's why Tanis is, because Sheshonk goes on these expeditions and campaigns in the Eastern Mediterranean. And he's known from texts that survive in Karnak Temple. There's something called the Bubastite Portal, and it's a doorway, and there's this beautiful, beautiful relief of Sheshonk and a bunch of names of people in the Eastern Mediterranean that he supposedly conquers. And there's also a copy, or maybe not a copy of that exact text, but Sheshonk also erects a temple to Amun at the site of El Hiba, which I am going to excavate this winter. Yeah, so we have the cartouche and fragmentary inscriptions of Sheshonek at the site of El Hiba, which is, so I might be in for some Sheshonk.
Tell us if you find the Ark.
Yeah.
I will. Right. So it was the capital. Tanis was the capital, but then the royal residence, I'm not kidding, the royal residence of in the third intermediate period probably was in El Hiba.
I mean, Cambridge scholars just got it wrong. It's the, the statues are switched.
I feel like there's somebody listening to this podcast right now. I saw Chicago, like desperate, like stuck in traffic, desperately trying to like maintain like a flow chart of where we are going with this. Like, I thought Harrison for Pretty show. I was like, no, actually, we're doing history on this one.
But Harrison Ford is still extremely pretty.
Oh, that's never in question.
Yeah.
He is a dreamboat.
I think, like I said earlier, I think arguably the handsomest man in the history of civilization.
Okay, Salah's rooftop. Talk about speaking to me personally when he's on Salah's rooftop.
Oh, what
shirt slightly undone.
God. Oh my God, that wry smile that he gives.
You guys need a minute?
Did I send you both that GIF?
You sent me that GIF.
I don't think I got it.
That's true. Well,
no, she sent me that GIF, and we had a moment. We had a little bit of a.
If you're listening now, what's on the screen is the text thread that I asked Kate to send to me.
You better not have that, because if you do.
Can I tell you that we did the Horizon pod last night, and this was the exact same conversation we got. Like
the common variable here is you, Jason.
No, Megan Kate Nelson and Kate Carpenter got into who is the hottest of the bad guys, and I'm sitting here going.
It sounds like they love those kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
God bless them.
Which we do too.
All right, I have a question for you. We talked about contingency earlier. My great friend Lauren Leah Sheppard, when we did Old School like a year ago, we came up with the concept of a section called What the Florida.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to set this film in Florida. What happens if Indiana Jones has to go discover something in Florida?
Yeah.
So what changes here?
Well, there's already Nazis.
Idea that Belloc, there's already Nazis, but I loved your idea that Belloc is DeSantis.
Doesn't it make sense? Can't you see him in like a little white suit with like shoe lifts?
Instead of snakes, there's crocodiles. Or alligators.
We've got them.
Alligators, alligators for sure.
I think Rubio would be that first assistant in the jungle.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Right? I mean, that would be Marco Rubio because he's lying to our hero.
Yeah.
He's afraid and also very thirsty.
I don't know. Wouldn't Marco Rubio be the dude with the glasses? Wouldn't like Rick Scott be the Nazi and Marco Rubio be the guy with the glasses?
Who would be the guy at the beginning who runs away? Who? That would be Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley would come down from Missouri and he would just run because he's really good at running, and we know he's good at running. And so that's good. I think Chris Rufo would actually be the guy who throw me the whip, I give the idol.
Oh,
I don't know. Or would it be like Tom Brady or something now, right? Because he's just like, throw it to me, I got it, or I'll throw this to you and you'll catch it.
Here's the question though. Yeah. In all seriousness, what would they be looking for in Florida?
The Fountain of Youth.
Well, that was my thought.
Oh, that's
Fountain
it.
Youth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's St. Augustine. Yeah. I've been there. It tastes like tap water.
Yeah. Was that Ponce de Leon? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something, I'll say something related to the Bermuda Triangle, right? I mean, not too far off.
Oh, you could do that. Absolutely, right? I mean, so you could
or maybe some ancient pirate treasure, right, from the time in which the Caribbean was being settled, and there's some pirate treasure that got probably placed somewhere in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
Like a Count of Monte Cristo, but in Florida.
Does Indiana Jones wear flip-flops in Florida?
And the Hawaiian shirt, and I'm thinking sandals.
Yeah, I'm thinking linen.
No, I don't think so, because he is utilitarian. He wears at least running shoes. What
about the running shoes that curve around your toes?
Oh God, no. He's not that much of a douche. No, he's not.
No. Oh, I think he is.
No.
I agree with you.
Right.
I'm kind of imagining
he does wear a crossbody bag. It's his satchel.
I'm not kidding. I was literally I googled Indiana Jones shirts earlier today. I did, and they are not cheap. But I'm like, I don't even give a shit. I am so.
So can I tell you, I have a friend who is on several documentaries and things, does some TV presenting for stuff on ancient Egypt, and he always wears the same uniform. And it's jeans and a button-up shirt, and it's always the same, and I love it, and it reminds me so much of Indiana Jones.
Right, you got your thing.
You have to have a thing.
You have your thing, right? And I feel like That's
May,
actually
may
my
I
thing.
also
Go ahead.
say, just because we're trashing Florida, I love Disney and Disney World, and I go there almost every year.
Thank you. I
So
used to work there.
please don't ban me, Florida, from visiting your great state. And I have family in Miami.
Oh, really? No, Julie. What you don't know is like I used to work at Walt Disney World. Like I moved here from Florida. I'm a Florida historian. Like let's fucking go. Like all day long. Like I am here to
I
fight for
spend
Florida.
way too much time. I did the Disneyland, Disney World in 1 week. So I started my week in
She
Disneyland
totally
and then I
did.
ended it in Disney World. Yeah, I'm one of those people.
You're my people. I
Yeah.
mean, okay. What you don't see, and Kate knows this, but there is right behind the monitor here is a poster of Carousel of Progress. And then there's also a poster of the Enchanted Tiki Room. And over there are the blueprints to Splash Mountain. So
In my so the now Tiana's Bayou Adventure,
that pod's
in this
coming
box
up.
that's hidden in shadows, I have my Haunted Mansion painting, which is this beautiful painting of the three ghosts in front of the Haunted Mansion.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. Okay.
That hangs on our
The
wall.
three of you are like.
I've got all my Run Disney medals right behind me here.
I have 2 Run Disney medals because I've done 2.
You know, I don't run.
I have sticky notes for my Disney.
Oh
pages.
God! See, you know, this is the thing where there's 3 of us who have like gotten through like that horrible experience of finishing your dissertation, and like I stupidly signed my book contract recently, so now I have to like go back and that's it.
Yay! No, I saw that, but it's so good that you said it out loud.
No, I have
Congrats.
to go back and do work again. I have to go back to write on early.
No, the best.
Send me stuff. I'll read
I
anything.
will.
I'll read
I will.
anything. I want to read it.
The
Okay.
best book is a done book, just like a best dissertation
It's
is a
coming.
done dissertation. So don't stress
Okay.
too much about it. Just fix it up, make it pretty, and
Put
send
it out
off.
there. Okay.
got it.
Speaking of books, perfect transition. Give to me, each one of you, your favorite books on the history of archaeology. What?
So I legitimately
I
don't
texted them
read a
last night.
whole
Let me know.
lot.
I'm stopping.
Do we get to
Stop.
talk about
Oh, no,
your
I
no,
book?
texted
say
them
it.
last
No,
night, and I said you are not allowed to say
producer.
anything having to do with me.
Have your book. It's like
Producer, we're going to cut out Kate, and we're going to continue with this. One of the most profound books I've read in the recent past, and perhaps of all time, is a book written by our very own Dr. Kate Sheppard. Oh, that's the margarita.
That's what
happening.
happens when we drink,
By
kids.
our very own Dr. Kate Sheppard, who has written the most incredible book, but truly and
Is
seriously,
this so
a
fucking
really,
good
really,
or
really
what?
interesting book. I was so lucky to have read it already. And it is a beautiful journey through the women that brought us Egyptology and the field of Egyptology in the early 20th century, late 19th, early 20th century.
Kate's ready to
in the
cry
Gilded
if you
Age.
guys can't
And
see. Go on.
yeah,
Look at her face. She's ready to cry.
I know.
No.
Those are tears of anger.
Because
They are.
She's
I
gonna slap me
legitimately,
later.
Jason, what I will do is I will screenshot what I sent to them. And I said, I know you saw Jason's email. And if either of you say I said, not because I think I'm that good, but because I know the both of you. And if either of you say any of my books, don't do it, period.
oh, it's so good.
And I said no
I'm not afraid of
promises.
you.
So I'm, yeah.
Yeah. You said no
Yeah.
promises.
All right.
But truly, I think part of the problem with not part of the problem, but I mean, some of the books of the history of Egyptology or history of archaeology kind of it's going through its own cycle, right? So, there's a lot about like Western, sort of white male, archaeology and the history of that, what are, Petrie and Lord Carnarvon and, his legacy and, which are all really influential people, like very influential folks. But I think now what I find really interesting are the books that, like Kate's earlier book that Tea on the Terrace, that also looked at sort of, I remember there was one great part of Tea on the Terrace where Kate is talking about hotels and hotels of places where people are interacting and sharing their research and, being like, oh, I need somebody to come work on this and, connecting and networking and how Egyptians are fundamentally sort of kept out of Western hotels. And so unless they're working there, right? And so by default, then they're kept out of the field of Egyptology, that of the sort of the biggest projects at the time. And so there really is this system in which Egyptians are kept out, in which women are kept out, in which people of color are kept out. So there are these sorts of systemic issues that people are talking about. And I think that's so much more interesting, I feel like now, because we can kind of know about the other guys. And now I'm more interested in these other books. And 2 of those books have been written by Kate Sheppard.
crazy how like Kate is like good at
Well,
this.
3 if you count the edited volume of the letters of My Dear Miss Ransom. So if you count that, then 3.
Yeah, good point.
All right, Leah, what do you like?
You guys.
Like, we're not even going to ask Kate about her books, like about what she likes. Like, Leah, what do you like? Like, aside from Dr.
Aside
Sheppard.
from Tea on the Terrace, My Dear Miss Ransom, You Call This Archaeology, and Women in the Valley of the Kings forthcoming July 16th, 2024, or forthcoming at the time of this recording. I have enjoyed Bruce Trigger's History of Archaeological Thought. That's a good one. Also, there's an incredible scholar who I think you know, Chris Naunton, who did Egyptologist Notebooks.
Hold that back up. That looks so cool. What is that? I'm a sucker for a good, like, public, like good book cover. Fuck yeah! Oh, that
the images inside are amazing.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can like smell that book as you're flipping through it. I can like smell it. Yeah,
it's on my shelf right there.
Oh yeah, I know, of course. And that one speaks to me personally because I keep a dig diary and keep a journal like obsessively with all of my research insights and conference notes, etc. So that one speaks to me.
All right, Kate, I made you do it earlier, so you want to give us some more books that you like?
More books, always more.
More books. Now, remember when we talked about The Mummy, I said, I'll tell you the ones I don't like. Remember when I did that?
We can talk shit, because I like to fight.
I know, I won't do...
I'm like, I'm not in the academy anymore, so I'm like, let's fucking go.
But it was Petrie, right? It was 70 Years in Archaeology is the one I hated. Do it. You should.
Get a Ouija board.
For History of Archaeology, I'm 100% with Bruce Trigger. That one is tough for me because I'm not like a super big like theory person.
Okay. Yeah, it's very theory heavy.
Theories.
Yeah.
I've always felt like history.
I've
always felt like theory was like academics like patting themselves on the back, like, oh, this. I would sit around and think about shit.
Okay, so bad theory is that, right? So this is the problem. I feel like good theory is not that, but people who are weak-minded use theory to sound important, like they know what they're doing, and then they get jobs at Ivy League institutions, and they say things like, when you talk to people and do job interviews, you should talk so that people get confused and lost and can't follow what you're saying, because that's how people know that you're smart, is when they don't follow what you're saying.
Can I tell you?
Versus making things accessible. So good theory can be used really, really well, and I think theory can do incredible things. It's just that most people who use it as a crutch rather than the difficult, complex, complicated tool that it is. That's my theory rant.
Yeah.
Could not have said it better myself. My God, Julia.
Like, here.
I'm like, yeah. All right. So, all right, Kate, you didn't escape. We're not going to let you escape. You have to give us a book.
So I've got the two that I love. I'm actually using as a prop for my computer so that it sits up.
10 books
and
right now,
I always use them.
On top of.
Yeah. I always use them. I've got 1,000 Miles Up the Nile, but it's the new edition from the Egypt Exploration Society, which so Carl Graves and Anna Garnett sort of redid, and then they wrote a brand new introduction for, which is fantastic. If you can get a hold of a copy, you'd be very lucky, but it's really good. And then my Bible, or the Who Was Who in Egyptology, that is edited by Morris Bierbrier, and it's basically an encyclopedic biography. It has mini biographies of a bunch of dead Egyptologists. You have to die to get into Who Was Who. And when I was talking to the archivist at the Egypt Exploration Society, which is, he was the archivist, he's now the director, which is Carl Graves. He said, please write your own entry into Who Was Who, because very sadly, Morris Bierbrier died earlier this year, but he already wrote his own entry into his own book. And so, which when Carl told me that, I just started crying. I'd met Morris like twice, but I was just bawling when he told me that. And it's just really special. So, but it's super useful. Those are my two.
I love it. The only history archaeology book I have is yours. So that's my recommendation.
It's a good one to have.
Seriously, okay, so I have to tell you guys, like I I genuinely like when I invite people on to the pod. Sometimes I invite folks who are like, I see their work and they get and I like, oh, this looks cool or whatever. But usually I'm trying to invite folks on that I know. And I had met Kate on social media some time ago. I can't recall. But I want my friends on and stuff like that. But I've pumped this book a few different times on social media because I just fucking believe in it. So that's like, I always like want to like if somebody comes on the pod, I want to make sure that like, hey, like, check them out, blah blah blah. But like, this fucking book is so goddamn cool. So, and that's why I'm cursing because I believe in it, but also I'm down to this much of this bottle. So there's that.
Wonderful, and I wrote that down.
All right.
Thank you. That's very nice.
We need to rate the films. We're down to 5 films. We're coming up to a close here. We have 5 Indiana Jones films, 1 through 5. I'm just going to go in order here. Leah, you're the first person I see here. You're all the way to the left. You are reviewer number 1. What do you got? What's your go 5 to 1?
Best is Raiders. Okay. Controversial. No, I'm not going to be controversial. Raiders first. Second is going to be not Temple of Doom. That's going to be bottom for sure. The Last Crusade, third one. Followed by Dial of Destiny as the
enjoyable
third.
Film.
Really good.
It's an enjoyable
I need to watch it.
Yeah, you do. You really do.
Quite
so, good. And then Crystal Skull for the laughs, because it's really good to make fun of. And then last will be Temple of Doom.
Okay.
I in all honesty, I've only watched it once. That's
wow.
I can't get past the racism. I can't.
I feel like we can talk about that.
And I completely see, of course, what we were discussing earlier is the value in things, and we have the good parts and the bad parts. But personally, I can't watch
We've
it.
done Raiders and we've done Last Crusade on HATM on the Sunday night watch party that we do. We've never done Temple of Doom. And it is, and I'm not afraid to talk about difficult things or poor representation in film, things like that. In fact, these are things at times that I want to embrace as far as like, hey, let's talk about like difficult things. At the same time, it's a tough film. It's a tough, looking back, especially, and I hate to say this in this way, but as an academic, as a person who works now with historically marginalized communities, it's a difficult, at the same time, I still at times enjoy the film. So it's like Julia was saying earlier, it's like,
which is completely valid.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
Julia, what you got? Give me your rankings. Where you come in, since you've bothered to see all of them.
All right.
Okay.
Yes. So going from worst to best, I'll say Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is my worst.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, for the longest time, I just refused to acknowledge it.
Thank you. Thank you. It is the last Jedi of Raiders of Indiana Jones for me. But go on.
Yeah,
we have to talk about that because
dog shit.
I don't know. There's I mean, I rewatched it recently and I hated it slightly less. But it's still last. Tied for third because I realized when we first started that I can put multiple things in one spot.
That's what I did.
According to the Jason rules. So I am putting both Temple of Doom and the Dial of Destiny in spot 3. Because I really like Dial of Destiny, but it is definitely a different sort of generation of indie. It's not that classic indie for me. And for me, Temple of Doom, I fully appreciate the challenges in the movie, but I love horror films, and Temple of Doom has the most horror elements to it. And so I love that side of it. And so I think for me, I just love that so much that I forget about or I ignore, and I have the privilege to just ignore and forget about the other parts. Second is Last Crusade, and I used to not like the Last Crusade as much. But my husband, actually, Brian Brinkman, is a classicist, and he first fell in love with Egyptology and archaeology and ancient history by watching The Last Crusade. Yes, he absolutely needs to be on the pod.
He would
He actually
be
taught,
amazing.
Okay.
and he taught a film at LMU. He taught Ancient World through film, so he has
Oh,
lots of like
okay.
great like thoughts on
We'd
film.
love to have him on.
And this is actually his like favorite movie of all time, and so he made, besides Back to the Future. And so I think he was like, why are you doing this and not me?
I love that
because he's my friend, but not like Julia.
I love
friend.
that we could be
Yeah, I was like,
the
come on.
source of marital strife. Could go on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I promise you. Yeah, it's I'll invite you to the divorce party. And I'm just kidding. So he introduced me though to Last Crusade as this like film that like really sort of inspired him. He remember watching it on TV. He's also from Utah, and the opening scene is the
So
young
cool.
Indy Jones that was kind of like his age in Utah. And so
why
like,
is everybody lost?
We're
with
actually
me?
looking for a third
Yeah.
person
Yeah,
for
and
that
so-
pod, for the Last Crusade pod. I have two other guys. So go
All
ahead.
right. Well, you may need to talk
Okay.
to Brian.
You found him.
This is perfect. Go
If
on.
you want another, white guy to talk about archaeology.
Well, so that's the thing
I
with
think-
HATM. I was trying to line up only white men to talk about movies and history
Yeah,
always.
and which I think will be successful from Utah. It'll
Okay,
be
good.
good. And then top, I mean, just Raiders, as I said before, Raiders is one of the greatest films of all time. And so Raiders is number one in this list. And anybody who says anything different, I'm sorry, there's like people on Reddit who are like, no, Last Crusade is the best. I'm like, no, I'm sorry.
No.
Like, you cannot have any other answer besides this. And so I'm interested to see what Kate has to say now, because if you have another answer besides this, yeah, right.
Oh boy, fight!
Fight.
Fight!
So
Fight.
So it's okay. So I can only rank 4 because I've only seen 4.
Fair enough.
Obviously, Crystal Skull the worst. Temple of Doom also number 3. Y'all, Last Crusade is my number 1. And it's not because Raiders isn't perfect, but because Last Crusade is also perfect. And listen, the interplay that he has with Dr. Schrader when they get off the boat in Venice, and it's just but now, by tomorrow this will have died. And, well, tomorrow I'll get you a new one. And then Marcus Brody is like, does anyone here speak English or even ancient Greek? I mean, there is so much classic stuff. Like,
We're gonna have 7 people on
yes,
for that podcast.
You're
We're
gonna
gonna have
really
like 7
enjoy
people
Dial
on
of
for
Destiny
Last
also.
Crusade.
Can't
I feel like I can't not invite the 3 of you on. Plus Julia's husband.
but it's so.
Plus Thomas. Plus John.
I will come. I'll fight
Shit.
Brian. I
Let's
will
go.
fight Brian. I'll just go down to Springfield. Here's what will happen. I'll just go down to Springfield. I'll sit in Julia and Brian's house, and we'll just be all on one screen.
Oh, you know what we could do? I have 2 different thoughts. We can do like a watch party where we watch it, but also we can let's do a round table. Like I get like conferences now. We're asking for HATM roundtables all the time. Like, let's just go. All right, go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I was just going to say, so there's so much about it that I think they learned from Raiders and from doing Temple of Doom so poorly that they put into this one. And especially with Sean Connery. And there's so many wonderful scenes where Indiana Jones has to manage his dad, who is a freaking genius. But like,
Soldering.
he's like, I find if I just sit down, and then he leans back and Indy falls down the stairs and he goes, huh, the solution presents itself. And it's like, they are this team
The
of,
chemistry
and it's just like,
between Harrison
I didn't
Ford-
know you knew how to fly a plane. Fly, yes. Land, no. Like, there's all this wonderful stuff. So, sorry, what,
No, the
Jason, what'd
chemistry
you say?
between Harrison Ford and Sean Connery is
Yes.
perfect. Right? And
Yes.
Spielberg has said he made Last Crusade as a way of making up for Temple of Doom, which I don't think was necessary in the way that Spielberg says. I want to talk about that because I do want to talk about Temple of Doom in a second. But again, okay, so you've got Raiders is number 2. I feel like
But a close.
Yeah.
It's like right here. They're like
I feel like
fighting. Yeah.
I feel like Last Crusade is better than, say, I'm going to make some analogies here to Star Wars. It's better than Return of the Jedi, but Return of the Jedi is the easiest of the 3 to watch, right? It's so it moves so fast.
Yes.
We already know the characters. We have investment, commitment. We're not asking why.
Yeah.
We are like, let's go, right? And Last Crusade, we know who Marcus is, right? We're introduced to this one new guy, okay, and things like that in Henry, right? But generally, it's a return to all these people we already know and love, aside from Marion, who's not in the film, which is a bummer. But again, we get her, and I think we get the real Marion in Dial of Destiny. Her portrayal in Crystal Skull was a real weak point.
And
It was no, because she was like, "Oh, he loves me," and like that was the most important
She
thing
was
to
like
her.
a caricature.
That is not the
She
most
was
important thing
not
to her.
Marion in that film. But so if I want to interject my own thoughts in here. I think Raiders is number one for me.
Yeah.
Because again, I think it is
Correct.
There are a few perfect films in my mind, and I can probably name in my mind 20 perfect films, and they're not all Citizen Kane-esque films. Like I think Predator is actually a perfect film, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film.
Love
because
Predator so
because
much.
what Predator does, Predator is like a perfect version of what it's supposed to be, right?
Yes.
Back to the Future is a perfect film. Okay.
Yes. Hands up.
I think Raiders of the Lost Ark is a perfect movie. And that's not a disservice to Last Crusade, which is like 1B. Because it's like also perfect.
Yeah. They're right here.
I think Temple of Doom is better than a lot of people give it credit for. There's aside from the racism, yes, white Southern man, I'm gonna have to say it like that now. But I applaud Spielberg for
I
they tried to go dark on that. Right? They tried to really go in a different space, and I give them credit for it. And Julie, I think you're absolutely right. Dial of Destiny is not in the realm, I think, in a lot of ways of the first three. It feels like a different set of film. It feels like a different thing. Mm-hmm. But on its own.
But it's so fun.
Yeah, on its own. It's still a fun thing. And I can't talk about this at length because I really don't want to ruin it for Kate. But I felt like Phoebe Waller-Bridge was such a breath of fresh air. Helena Shaw's character is so much fun in that movie. I will watch a series of films about her. I loved her. And I hated her in Solo. Like her character in Solo, I did not like at all. But I thought I've loved a lot of the other stuff that she's done. I thought she was fun. I thought actually she is probably the best thing in Dial of Destiny, even more so than Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also a tinge of sadness that we can't get into in this film. That I don't want to like. It was just there was a cloud overhanging that thing that I really dug. So, I want to ask you before we get into the final aspect of this film. There was some talk about recasting Indiana Jones. Like, in your own mind, is there any actor working in 2024? Maybe that couldn't be Indiana Jones. Maybe Indiana Jones is great grandson at this point in time. If you were going to make a new series of films starring Kentucky Jones, Bluegrass Jones, yeah, I'm from Kentucky. Who do you cast? Is there somebody off the top of your head? I didn't prep you on this. Who's got that moxie? Is there anyone at all? Men or women?
My gut reaction. So my gut reaction is not the same physicality, but the sort of sarcastic, sardonic, sort of jokey humor of Ryan Reynolds.
I knew you were going to say that.
God damn it. Yeah. Okay. Kate?
But also, Chris
Pratt Evans.
One of
Evans. It's Evans, the Captain America.
Oh. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him doing
All right, because...
How about...
Go ahead.
How about the actor who can truly play any role, Tatiana Maslany?
Oh, she's good.
I don't know who this is.
Orphan Black?
She-Hulk?
Okay. No.
Okay. I'm writing her down. I'm writing her down right now.
You must watch Orphan Black.
Kate just said a Chris, and I was like, Chris Pine.
Chris Pine.
Yeah.
Chris Pine could do it.
Pine too, right?
I think Chris Pine's got it.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk.
He's good in those.
Because he's Captain
I
Kirk
feel
as
like
well,
one of the things
and he brought.
They haven't done that Star Trek series justice because that cast is phenomenal. And Chris Pine, I think, is a much better actor than we give him credit for. The other guy I was thinking about was Bradley Cooper.
Absolutely.
Like Bradley Cooper, I think could bring it.
Okay.
So, but
Or what about what's his name? Who is in I don't know, the guy who has the "Hey Girl" meme from like 2014.
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan
Gosling's good. I love.
He's Ken.
Listen,
He's
you guys want to come on for the La La Land episode and like I'll cry the whole time?
Oh, He's
But are you
adorable in
okay
that.
if I totally crap on that movie?
As long as you don't judge
No.
me in the last 10 minutes when I start bawling at the very end.
But yeah, fair.
Oh,
Yeah.
Aww.
I still like La La Land has hurt. La La Land hurt me on levels. Like
No.
It shouldn't have ended the way it did, and I know
I
we
think
talked
it's
about
brave.
this last time, and you think it should have still ended the way
do
it
we
did,
talk
but
about
I
La
don't
La
think it
Land?
should.
Jesus, all I do is talk about the film?
You love it.
I
You
do
love that
love it because it hurts me. I felt like they made some really brave
I
choices.
don't know. I was really disappointed by it.
How dare you, Julia?
But I didn't see it until like many years later, you know? So I think I had it maybe also built up in my head in such a way that it just didn't live up to it. I also hate
Stone
musicals.
and Gosling are like,
Okay, so I feel
They should
like
always be
they
together in
are
films.
the current like Tracy Hepburn kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
want
Yep.
they've actually
I
been in
see
a
it.
bunch of films, but I want more. I feel like we are due for a film
Mhm.
from them at least every 5 years.
at least.
Yeah,
I
can
can
see
do
that.
indie films. I can
It's
do
like
big
service
films,
to
and I
humanity.
need to see them in romantic stories, like Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah.
The two of them.
All right.
It's amazing.
I have
Go ahead.
another. I want to throw out one more Indiana Jones, and follow me with this.
I got some wine.
Jason Mantzoukas.
Who?
Jason
Jason
Hold on, I'm
Mantzoukas.
googling.
Jason Mantzoukas. He
Yes,
is.
yes.
So he's in the league. He also is on the podcast.
Yes.
How did this get made?
Oh, I thought. Okay.
He is
Oh, I like
one
him.
of the funniest.
Yes.
I almost came onto the show and said, "What's up, jerks?" Just as because that's what he says every time there's a live show for How Did This Get Made.
Yeah.
He is hilarious.
He's so
he
good.
also is a sweetheart, and he has like throughout, like especially throughout the podcast, you get that he has like this very like sort of he's a total softie, and I feel like he could actually kind of play
Okay.
the Indiana Jones.
You
humor
need the humor
and
aspect. There's got to be a
art.
physicality, a level
Mhm.
of like physical attractiveness, right? A guy that can beat you up
Mhm.
if need be.
Oh, also, have we not talked about Keanu Reeves yet?
Oh shit! Well,
He's a little.
is he? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I feel like he's a little too old.
Well,
Is he? Well, maybe now. Is he too John Wick? He's too like suave.
And
not
I am
rugged.
fascinated with Keanu Reeves' career trajectory because we think about him in terms of like 4 different characters now. He's really had an amazing thing in this John Wick thing, and everything I've ever read is that Keanu Reeves is a good human being. Capital G, capital
Yeah.
H,
Mhm.
capital B.
Yep.
Right,
Yes.
and like so,
Same.
I want that dude.
But
to
he's in a
succeed.
terrible band.
That's fine. I don't give a shit about Doc Star. Right, it's not my music.
I say that just because my mom loves
Listen,
him, and my mom loves.
I
his
listen to a lot of
bands.
Love It, so that's my. Oh yeah,
nice.
I'm like Lyle Love It, Jack Johnson kind of vibe over here. But either way, all right. I want to ask you our final question tonight because I promised you like an hour and a half worth of conversation. Now we're coming up on 2.5, and I'm sorry. You know, I'm not even.
Yeah, I hope this is your longest podcast
Okay.
ever.
Ooh, actually, we're coming up on it. I think right now we're at number 2 because our longest one was Dungeons and Dragons, and I get like it came in at over like 3 hours.
That's a great episode. I listened to
Thank
it.
you so much. Right. And I have to tell you, like,
I listened to the Knight's Tale today
Oh, that was a
earlier
fun
today, and was also
you.
loving the Knight's Tale
um,
because I also
Yeah.
love that movie.
Oh, me
so I
too.
have to tell you, as we were recording this, I'm like, holy fuck, this might be my favorite pod we've done. Like the whole time we're talking tonight, I'm having so much fun.
Oh yeah, I mean,
full
obviously.
on, like straight up, like I have a bunch of favorites, like Godzilla -1.
He says this to everybody.
No, I have some
does.
where like I'll mess with Fletcher, and I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
and usually it's like, and sometimes the interesting thing when you do this is like the producer will listen and be like, no, that was great, it was really, really good, you know. But sometimes you don't have the chemistry, or you like worry, like, did I say the right thing, or was the timing right, or whatever. But the whole time we're talking, I'm like, this is so fucking good.
It's because it's.
Well, so I have to message. I don't know if Kate told you, like when she messaged me earlier about doing this, she's like, would you be okay talking to 3 women about this movie? I was like,
Dude.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want another dude? Because Brian just walked in and he could if he needed.
Actually, no. Actually, I didn't know his name was Brian. So we're anti-Irish over here. So
Oh, but it's spelled with a Y. The
I
correct
don't
way.
fucking know the difference, right? So no, and I told Kate, it's like, no, actually, I like the idea of like doing this to a hyper masculine film with 3 women, right? Like this is an important thing to do. Like I like the idea of flipping the sunset. But coming back to the film, is Raiders of the Lost Ark a history movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
You all three said it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Why?
Leah, I
Leah,
feel like
you
Yeah,
had your
yeah.
finger
you
up first.
start.
Leah, Leah,
you
you're
the
the
finger.
least drinkingest of the three of us, of the four of us. Like I am, like just
That's
what's the
true.
alcohol? Hold on a second. What is this?
It's like 14%
On this
at
one,
least.
I'm
What's
feeling
the
a little bit.
alcohol
Just a
content?
second.
No, that must be like 12.7.
No, Penfold.
That's what
No,
my guess is.
Penfolds is
12.7.
Australian. They don't. No, this is 14.5. They do not fuck around in Australia.
All right, shit.
Penfolds is like, oh, you think you want to have some wine, eh? Go ahead.
They want you to wrestle.
That was
across
definitely
that with a tongue.
Scotland.
Really,
But okay.
when I drink, I will go through this phase of like
Oh
Australia
no.
and Russia. Oh yeah, it's my accents. Oh yeah, the only thing I won't do is a southern accent because my mom's like, Jason, you're not one of us anymore, sweetheart. No, you were not from
No.
Kentucky. Stop.
You've been disowned.
All right,
Yeah.
Leah, you're saying.
Okay, I believe it is a
Okay.
history movie because not only did it spawn a generation of archaeologists, but also there is a great deal of history in the film itself. And I mean, however long that scene I talked about when they're at the blackboard in that empty lecture hall, however short that was, you could see their excitement. You could see them connecting the dots. Oh, they found
Oh my God,
Tanis.
the chalk on
Tanis
the
is
board.
this place connected. The chalk on the board. It's the
That
red.
he pulled from
Oh
his
my God,
pocket.
I was so,
Pulled it from
like,
his
as a
pocket.
nerd, guys, I was like,
I know. I was like,
oh,
he had it in
so
his
cool,
pocket.
right? Go on,
So
They
cool.
flipped
so
the board
cool.
over.
It absolutely is.
right?
Mhm.
And that book that has the buckles. I love that he buckled his book.
And then it
you
goes
know?
right to the
Mhm.
page.
And he goes right to the
Right
page.
to the page.
Exactly. And he's got all this and that scene especially. I keep harping on about this scene, but truly it's magical for me because it's the magic of when you're in a book, such as Tea on the Terrace or Women in the Valley of the Kings, and you make these connections between things you already knew and new things that you're learning that connect the dots to
Thank you.
recreate history and to tell the stories of people in the past that speak to us through the remains of what they left for us today. And that is the magic of archaeology, that is the magic of history, and that is why we do what we do. Thank you very much.
And the magic of film.
God,
Yeah.
this movie
And
delivers
the
on
fact
it.
that a film can convey this excitement.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, Julia. Absolutely.
And Leah, when you're talking about this scene, I remember again watching this when I was a kid and going, how, like, I couldn't have, like, I didn't say these things in this coherent way in my brain when I was
'Cause
8.
you were
But
8.
like, I do remember thinking, oh,
You
because
were
I was 8. But I remember thinking, and now I'm older,
Like
but not that much older. I'm at least
38.
18.
I know how old
No.
you are. You posted.
I'm at least,
I'm not gonna say. I'm older.
doesn't say. You are.
Kate is
That's
always
what matters.
I
That's
just
barely
said this
Gen X.
before. Kate is always 31.
She's
always-
I barely remember
She's
31.
always
Go
31.
on.
But I remember thinking, like, I want at some point in my life to be able to, if someone comes and asks me this question, to be able to go, I know the answer, I know where to find it, and I know why these things all tie together. And I remember thinking how, and this is how nerdy I am, I remember thinking how cool that would be,
Yeah.
right? To be able to go, this is the answer, and here's how I know it. And so again, that like drove me into this, but that excitement also pulls me to that scene where they realize that the staff of Ra is too tall. And both Sala and Indigo, they're
Wrong
digging in the
place.
wrong place, and they
Digging in
were
the wrong place.
so excited about it. Yeah.
It's such a discovery.
That's
in this
right.
film.
That's in archaeology.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's archaeological discovery. That is the adventure. That is the mystery and the Dan Brown of it all, right? It's
Mhm.
they're digging in the wrong place, and now we can go and find the real thing. And that's when the Mummy as well. It's that uncovering and deciphering something that other people haven't figured out yet. That is so
Yep.
exciting.
Yeah.
Exactly. And how do they figure out that they're digging in the wrong place? It's because was it
Science.
Belloc? It was Belloc who burned his hand on the medallion.
No, it was the Nazi. It was the
It was
Nazi.
Nazi. Okay, I forget. who it
Belloc
was.
was a Nazi
I
too, but
never
this was the
remember his
nameless
name.
Nazi.
This is the nameless Nazi. He burns it onto his hand, and they're able to read the inscription
Uh-huh.
through the burn on his hand, which is just so just so badass, so action.
Yeah.
So action movie. But there is a reverse side to the staff that says, and you take away one I don't know,
Kadam.
yeah, exactly, for God. And that is so exciting. And I feel like a lot of, I have my own theories, but my advisor always tells me to look on the other side of the object. What are you missing, right? What's on the other side of the papyrus that other people? And so when you actually make that discovery and you see what's on the other side of the medallion, what's on the other side of the papyrus, and make that connection, it's just such a magical feeling.
I was on. I was texting a good friend of mine, Mike Ryan. He's a professor at the University of New Mexico, incredibly talented guy, fellow Minnesota alum. And we're talking back and forth and so forth about the field and things like that. And Mike was like, I hope he doesn't mind. It's like, I worry about where we are. I worry about things like that. I'm like, Mike, you don't understand, man. I was like, we communicate with the ancestors, man. Like, this is high level sorcery we are doing right now. Yeah. And that's what I love about Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones, like this idea. And I think maybe, and I don't want to speak for the three of you, what called me into this field was this idea that I can talk to the ancestors. And I feel so much of that in these movies, It's awesome.
100%.
Or that the ancients are speaking to us today.
Absolutely.
Jason, let me just say that the work of my two colleagues here, Leah and Julia, they go and they dig. I decided a long time ago I did not want to go on site, but they're like, we're going to go and we're going to be with spiders. We're going to go do these things. What these two women do with the work that they produce is they put the humanity back into the material culture that comes out of the ground. They say there were people that were a person with feelings and who was loved and who loved, wrote these things down on a papyrus and they stuffed them into a crocodile. Or like there are people who wrote this graffiti on the wall at Karnak, and we need to understand what all of this means. So they put the humanity back into our ancestors and back into the things that people left behind. And that's what's so important about the work that archaeologists do.
You guys should know, I ended up going into history versus say anthropology, mostly because I hated APA citation. I'm not exaggerating because
that's valid. That's so
but
valid.
You loved Chicago citation?
Fuck yeah, I do. I want to be able to find the things I'm looking for, right?
Stop.
If Kate's like, hey, here's where I found this thing. I'm like, oh, here's the book. Here's the name. Here's the book. Here's the page number. Wow. Amazing. It's not like I've got to look, at Smith 2009. Fuck you. Right?
See, I use Chicago author. See, I use Chicago author date. I'm a Chicago author dater.
No, so. I want to know, like, as a historian, I want to go to the goddamn page. I want to go to the paragraph and the line number.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, but as a historian, I am. So Chicago, it's author, date, page. So it's the best of both worlds. It is Kate 2014, page 17.
I need more.
And what about MLA?
No. Jason's like, I was not even talking about
no,
this.
Like APA's like, good luck.
The dark horse here. Of
All right,
course.
look.
The dark horse here is
if you
MLA.
guys play like role-playing games.
Yeah, and let me also just say, I will fight for the Oxford comma.
All day.
Absolutely, I'm with you, girl. But anyway, Jason, you were saying you went into this field. You were saying, back on track, you went into this field because you didn't like the APA citation style. We're putting humanity back in history, individuals, identities, and you didn't like APA.
I'm an ethnohistorian by training. Right, so I read about the Native South. My master's thesis was on the Creek Choctaw War of 1766 to 1776. My first book is actually on the introduction of cattle into indigenous Florida. Right, so cattle change everything. Like in Florida, right? It's like Florida's the first West, but I very easily.
That's the title of the book.
I've got a couple different ideas and so forth. I'm thinking about Rawhide Empire right now, just because the word empire sounds.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Really
And then you can
good.
throw in a dead Kennedy's quote in there somewhere.
Yeah.
From
So I love anthropology. I actually did my minor was anthro. I did a bunch of anthro credits at Wichita State University doing my master's and so forth. And because I'm an ethnohistorian, anthro very much is very important into like the way that my methodology. I read a shit ton of archaeology because of the sources and stuff like that and so forth. So it's still very important to me. I just hate the citation. Like, and you know, it's just, it's, and maybe because I remember, I'll tell you quickly, like, one of Dave Hacker was one of the guys. He's this amazing Civil War historian. He's on my master's, he's on my dissertation committee. And I write to Dave, and he writes to me as I was coming up on my dissertation, and he's like, "Hey, we're friends, right?" I'm like, "Yeah," because I TA'd for him a couple times in Minnesota. And he's like, so we can talk, right? I'm like, of course, Dave. And Dave is amazing. I love Dave Hacker. And he goes, fucking hate the way you write. And I'm like, what? He's like, you're writing about the sound of the leaves in the trees when the wind blows through Florida and the horses and the quarter notes of a horse gallop. And he's like a quantitative historian who writes about like numbers. It's like, hate that shit.
A very classical Civil War historian.
Yeah, and I do not, and I don't say that to like say anything negative about Dave because he's wonderful. And he gave some really great, effective comments. But I like to write in very floral kind of style, and that's not necessarily the way.
It's all phenomenology and placemaking and sensory experience,
feelings,
right?
Yes. Julia.
Yes.
Like I want you to like as I write and as I moved forward, I began to write more and more like an environmental historian, where I want you to understand the place and what place does to identity and things like that. So, long story short.
Have you read Keith Basso's work on placemaking?
No, send it to me because I want to hear. Please.
I'll send it to you. He's because he studies indigenous populations and looks at place, like naming practices of places as part of memory. In indigenous communities in the West.
I do that in Florida. Like somebody just, and I hadn't read his stuff. So like, yeah, because everything's actually named after cattle. If once you learn Miccosukee and Muskogee, like,
you have to read this. Yeah, you have to read this.
Okay, that's enough about me. I don't want to talk about me. Guys, this was so much fun. Kate was like, I have friends who would want to come on the pod. Do you think it'd be okay if they come on? It's like, fucking bring them. So,
thank you.
This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for like coming in to talk about this movie we all love. Please come back for more podcasts.
Love it.
Because this was
absolutely.
So also,
I think officially you're not going to be able to get rid of it.
No, are you kidding me?
And hopefully your listeners don't hate us because I think we're going to force ourselves on future podcasts.
Also, Kate, we are now 2 for 2. I'm like, I was looking back, like I drained an entire bottle of wine the first time you were on. We're now 2 for 2.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I like to encourage that kind of behavior.
Well, what I like to do.
I mean, you're home, you know.
No, it's time to text an ex. Like that's the way I think. Like I would think about the past.
Just go on Instagram and repost stories.
So, guys, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate you and your work so much.
Oh yeah.
All right, hold on.
Go take an archaeology class.
Yes. Go read, make those connections.
I got my PhD. I don't have to read shit anymore ever. Like I'm done.
Well, not you. I'm talking to your listeners.
Well, that's different.